Hey, got 3 hours to waste? Well then, welcome
to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool.
Hey Tentacool, how you doing? You know that Audacity, after version 3 point something, now can record and listen to everything recorded on it? So you're like, wait a minute, this is like an open source project. How's that possible? Because that YouTuber Tentacool, who did that video on corporate music, took over the company, and they changed the license.
Yeah.
So because of its licensing, they can't stop you from using old Audacity and building on that.
Yeah.
Because it was open source. So you can still use old Audacity and any forks made from it. But the new license, and the new thing they've added, it allows you to spy on people that record on it, basically. So the one worrying thing on that is, let's say we make a podcast that's illegal to the Canadian government.
Yeah.
That would be fine previously, because, well, previously the Canadian government didn't penalize you for arbitrarily breaking new laws. And that didn't pass, actually, so we're fine, thankfully. Yeah. But if that had passed, like you're not allowed to say things even in your own home, they could then ask Audacity, give us the private recordings of these people so that we can prove that they've broken the new laws we've made.
Honestly, if that law is illegal to say things in your own home, I'd purposely get myself arrested and protest. I would not bow to that.
Yeah, I don't know about purposely. So here's my thought, right? You go to a protest, like let's say the anti-mask protests that were happening or whatever.
Yeah. I went to one of those. Well, not anti-mask, but yeah.
When you go to a protest, like in public, and you're like, yeah, well, first of all, you might be helping change, which is great, sure.
Yeah.
But you're also being marked. Mm-hmm. Because you are a revolutionary. You're an inflammatory
dissident.
You're a dissident, yeah. So I kind of think there might be something to the power you can do from within a system. So for instance, during the Chinese Revolution, there was probably it's China, so there was probably people, there was people, undoubtedly, who didn't like the way the government was going, but they were already a fairly high-ranking official, so they just sort of stepped aside, and now they are keeping the party in check. I imagine there's a decent amount of people in the Chinese party doing that, and slowly building their power base and getting ready for a coup, because that's all China does, is coups.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, so when Japan... I didn't actually know this, but Japan did this massive... I knew they attacked China.
Yeah.
But they also did a secondary massive attack near the end of the war, where it was like their last-ditch effort. And they attacked every colonized place on Earth, basically. So they attacked most of Africa, they attacked India, they attacked China, they attacked... Africa, India, and China is most of the world.
And the islands, the Asian islands all below it?
Possibly. That might have happened. I'm not sure about those ones.
And Australia?
But I think, they attacked Bangladesh. No, not Australia. And what they did was they kicked out all the British people and all the Belgian people, basically.
Yeah.
And so that is why today we have this massive freedom in Asia and this massive, in India and partly in Africa, because the Chinese kicked out all the colonialists.
The Japanese, you mean?
Sorry, the Japanese kicked out all the colonialists.
Yeah.
And they held on to the places for a year or two. And then the places held on for, while the war was getting cleaned up, for another couple of years. I don't know how long. And when the colonializers finally came back, they're like, no, we like it without you here. Stay out. So Japan was actually responsible, potentially, for a massive amount of decolonialization. But their second attack into China, if I'm getting the order right here, the Chinese National Army fought them. And Japan destroyed the Chinese National Army. Because, Japan was much stronger than China during World War II.
Yeah.
The Chinese National Army was potentially roughly about equal in strength to the Chinese Communist Army. And now today, China is communist because there was a civil war and Japan killed one side of the civil war.
Huh. And
so the communists didn't have any resistance. The communists might have won all right, but it was more of a 50-50. But then Japan went in.
Were the nationalists
They were the revolutionaries from 10 years before or something. China had a really bad...
I know.
It
had a few chaotic years.
Yeah. China had a bad time for 30 years or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know the history of it very well, but I was just learning a little bit about it, and I was like, wow, that's fascinating.
That should be about good.
Okay, so going on to I was listening to a lot of Dan Carlin. That's where I learned about this, and I might be getting the facts slightly wrong there. But I was watching some other shows by him, and he was talking about a lot of problems he's seen in the United States, and how he doesn't think they can be solved through democratic means, because the only people that are so if there's a thought experiment you can do, whereas drop a list of all the pros and all the cons of being the leader of a country.
Yeah.
And anyone that is sensible, right, would make a list with so many cons that they would never want to be a leader of a country, which means you only get people that aren't sensible enough for you to want them to lead a country, which means leaders of a country are always kind of bad. And I was thinking about this, and so...
Or insane.
So I want to talk about abusive relationships, right?
Yeah.
So... the thing about an abusive relationship is, let's say a wife is getting abused by her husband. If you ask her, like, what's going on in your relationship, she isn't blind to it. Like, she's aware of all the problems. She's like, well, my husband beats me. He's mean to the children. He doesn't work. I have to support him. I have to do all the stuff around the house.
I get hit by a lot of doorknobs accidentally while opening them.
But, like, if you ask, like, people in abusive relationships know that they are being abused, right?
Yeah.
It's just... why they stay in them, well, there's a bunch of reasons, but why they are still within this framework where they realize that they're being abused is because they don't see any other option, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, sure, my husband beats me, but that's what happens in a relationship. Your husband beats you. That's sort of the frame of mind.
Yeah, you can get that even, I think, broader with family. It's, responsible for my family.
Well, mine is a very extreme version.
Yeah.
But they're, like, in any family, there's the idea of, like, something, like, for example, dads are distant, that's just how they are, and that's in your family. In some families, they're very close to their children. And then there's the thing, like, well, you always have to do stuff for your parents, like, you always have to do chores for them, and I'm not saying, like, clean up your room. I'm saying, like, you have to help them, like, pay off, like, work at their shop, do like, be the one that picks them up after their work because they got their car impounded or whatever it might be. Like, you have to pick up the pieces for them, sort of. Oh, that's what kids do. They help out their parents. And it's true to a degree, you do help out your parents. But you are also aware that, wait, my friends aren't doing this. What's going on? But it's like, well, that's how families are, to a degree. And so you'd be like, well, yeah, if I had a different mother or father, it'd be the same sort of thing. And so there's a wide variety. But I'm just using, like, the husband abusing the spouse for a much more obvious one. And there's also the idea of, like, sure, I said with the friends, like, wait, my friends aren't going through this. And so you could be that with the wife could be as well, like, okay, yeah, I guess some husbands don't actually abuse their wives. Maybe that's rare, maybe it's not. But the thing is, yes, my husband abuses me. Yes, he's lazy. Yes, he's bad for the children. Yes, he's mean to the children. Yes, he's barely around, whatever it might be. But I love him. And this is the person I love. So he's the worst possible husband, right? But he's the best I've got because I love him, right? So you recognize all these problems. You might even realize that there's better people out there, but those people aren't the people you love, and so that makes all the difference. And what you don't realize within that relationship, I've talked to people in abusive relationships, and they even talk about how they need me. Like, this is, and that's another thing that keeps you, is you're trying to fix them or help them. You're like, okay, yeah, they're bad, but I can make them better. I can fix it. I can figure out a way to make it work. And the one girl, I remember her saying, like, oh, yeah, no, well, he was, yeah, sure, he's dangerous and he smashes stuff, but I love him so much, and I can't just, like, if I leave him, I don't know what'll happen to him. He might die, or, like, he might kill himself, or he might go mad, or whatever. And, so he's the worst possible boyfriend or husband or whatever, but you can't imagine being with anyone else because something bad would happen, or it'd be a failure of the relationship, or you'll just never love anyone like them, right? Because this is the person you love, and you give your heart to someone, and it's there for keeps, basically. The thing, and you think that even in a non-abusive relationship, you're like, I can't imagine loving someone else like this. And then the relationship fails, or you break up, and you're like, for months even, you can be like, well, I'll never love anyone again. This is awful. Like, it's all over, sort of thing. And then eventually you realize, oh, you can love other people and new people, but for a while you think, well, this is the only person like this, and all these characteristics are necessary for me to love them, and so, but the love comes secondary to that. The qualities, the individual qualities don't matter as much as the overall relationship you're in.
Yes.
And so there's a quote by Winston Churchill. I think you see where I'm going with this.
I think I do. I don't have it exactly, but like the gears are turning, the puzzle pieces are slowly revealing a picture, and I'm curious to see where it goes.
So of course I'm kind of quoting the famous Winston Churchill quote of, democracy is the worst possible system of government, but it's the best we've got.
Yeah.
And democracy has these issues where these power-hungry people who can manipulate the media or manipulate the public get in. Okay, so here's the thing about democracy as well, right? So Pontius Pilate didn't want to kill Jesus.
Yeah.
He was the consul
to Jerusalem, or not Jerusalem, but the area. He was what are they called?
Like, he wasn't a senator, but he was high up.
Yeah, he's someone who was high up. They didn't want to deal with him anymore, so they sent him out into the countryside to retire him, and he was the top judge in that area. His word was law.
Right. So I'm not exactly sure about the entire legalities of the situation, but it seems like he's allowed to pardon like one person every so often.
He can pardon anyone. He has absolute control within the Roman Republic.
Okay.
In his area.
So he was just trying to avoid responsibility then.
He's an absolute power.
So he put up to the vote. I don't know, maybe it's to prevent rebellion. I'm not sure why he didn't just pardon everyone in this case. But he didn't want to kill Jesus, but Jesus was a criminal who was condemned to die.
Yeah.
So he said to the people, look, okay, I'm going to pardon someone. Now, I don't know why he did it this way, if he was able to pardon as many people as he wanted. But he said, okay, I'm going to pardon someone, so I'll put it up to the vote. Do you want me to pardon Jesus or this serial killer? Like, they walk free, all the record struck clean.
Yeah.
They can do whatever they want afterwards. Like, I mean, if they break the law again, obviously they'll get captured, but I'll let them walk free. They can leave the city unharmed, do whatever they want. So do you want me to free the serial killer or Jesus?
Yeah.
And what did democracy decide on?
Well,
democracy got Jesus killed and let a serial killer walk free.
I think it wasn't that he could pardon Jesus after that, but he was trying to determine the will of the people, because it was them in the first place that said Jesus broke the law, because under Pax Romanus, which is Roman law, Jesus actually hadn't committed any crimes. However, under Jewish law, he had, and Pax Romanus is the laws of Rome and the laws of the local area are both in play as long as the Roman law is over the other law.
Right.
And so it was Jewish...
so it would be the Pharisees or whatever.
The Pharisees were petitioning Pontius Pilate to have Jesus executed.
Right.
And so he had to go with that law, but then he tried to do a loophole, but he had to do it through the will of the people, because if he overreached...
they would be angry.
Yes.
Right.
And
so
that could cause problems for Pontius Pilate.
But the choice he gave them is so obvious, right? Like, he obviously chose the worst person in the prison and Jesus. Like, even, okay, you don't like Jesus, sure, but do you want a murderer to go free, or a guy that says some stuff you don't like? Like, imagine nowadays if you're like, all right, so we've got like Charles Mason is back alive for some reason. We'll let him free, or we'll pardon Snowden. Like, which one do you want? And it's like, well, Snowden said things I didn't like, so set the serial killer cult leader free. Like, it's, I mean, Jesus, I guess, could be considered a cult leader. But he wasn't a serial killer. He's the only person in history, theoretically, who's the opposite of a serial killer.
Yeah.
I mean, besides women, maybe, but that's...
well, no, he's bringing people back to life.
Birth isn't the opposite of murder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
the opposite of death. But he wasn't doing the opposite of death. He was restoring people to life.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird, because I think in Christianity and Judaism possibly, but at least in Christianity, people are immortal. So
he's returning their mortal soul to the body to prove
their immortal soul to their body, or something.
to prove a miracle.
Yeah, but then, like, is he yoinking them out of heaven? Like,
yep.
How does that? Because the soul is immortal, right?
Yep. He was yoinking them out of heaven.
Maybe there's like a queue, and they were still near the back of the queue, and he's
just in purgatory.
Yeah.
He yoinked them out of purgatory.
Or it could be that, like, everyone dies.
Yeah.
And they're just, like, stuck in waiting mode, right?
Yeah.
And then once all humans are dead, then everyone goes to heaven at once. So there's no like old timers in heaven.
In the series Lucifer, they have an interesting thing, which is in hell. So if you're in hell for 2,000 years, and then somehow you get back to Earth, about a minute has passed. And it's the same with heaven. However, heaven's kind of like whatever time you need it to be. And so maybe like the waiting queue is sort of like that. Of just
The other thing about people and democracy is for society to function, or not to function, but people, it turns out, time and time again, need freedom. Because without freedom, you have dictators take over, right?
Yeah.
Or you have the quality of life descend to the point where revolution is inevitable and necessary. You have the Magna Carta being forced to be made. You have the Chinese revolutions, the French revolutions.
You have angry men wearing checkered dot skirts with giant swords screaming at you.
You have so, and the thing about no freedom as well is that you cannot actualize yourself. You cannot be free. So Jesus was a huge proponent of freedom, which was why they killed him probably to a degree.
Yeah.
But so in the Brothers Karamazov, when the Inquisitor is talking to Jesus, the Inquisitor has a very good argument against Jesus, where he says, "Look, you said to people, you do not need bread, the bread of earth. I will give you the bread of the Spirit. I will give you the bread, like I will set you free."
Yeah.
And the Inquisitor said, "No, we're not going to follow your teachings. We are going to feed the people. We're going to give them the bread of earth, because 90% of people just want bread. They don't want to actualize. They don't want to become like spiritually awakened. They don't want to fulfill their destiny. They don't want to, whatever it might be. They don't want," he said, "not everyone can be like you. Not everyone can go through the wilderness eating only bugs and roots. Like, people hate freedom. They want safety, and safety and freedom are opposites. And so we will feed the people. We will clothe them in ignorance. We'll forbid them from doing things, and they will thank us because that is what they want." And he said, and those few people like you that go on to heaven, well, it doesn't matter if you get in our way and we kill you, because you are actually going to heaven. You are the kingdom. You're bringing yourself to the kingdom of heaven, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't want to go to the kingdom of heaven. They just want to be safe, and they will give up all freedoms to do so, which I think was exemplified hugely recently if you watch the latest Peculiar Portions, where they were taunting a woman for trying to defend her llama's life because the llama possibly had typhus, not typhus. Yeah, it might have been typhus. I can't remember. Or no, not typhus. The other one, the lung disease, tuberculosis.
Yeah.
TB. The llama might have had TB, and she was trying to save it, and she thought that it might be a false positive from the tuberculosis vaccine, and they were laughing about the situation. And it is kind of absurd, like a judge sentencing a llama to death. So fair enough. But the point that really struck home for me was when Lewis went on a rant about how he's a vegetarian, but these people don't care about animals. They just care about their like pet or whatever. And if it has a disease, I don't want a chance of it going and killing everyone else. I want it. And Simon actually had a very good argument that, yeah, I agree with you, except I don't want people that are afraid of COVID to kill me because I might have COVID. And that's kind of weird, actually, because Simon, I tend to think, is the far more actually SJW one of them in a way. Well, he was like big, like anti-gamergator type.
If you've seen anything that he's done with G,
but no, I mean like he made fun of Total Biscuit for like complaining about Arnita Sarkeesian.
I think he's matured or changed.
Maybe he also has a lot of mental problems, which I think goes hand in hand with. So I think
I haven't seen that latest one, just so you know.
Okay, I think like he's a. I think most people are just good people with mental problems. That doesn't excuse what they do.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. Like, you can weep for the person they could be, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't put down the monster they are. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that they are monsters to be put down. Right, okay, but so what Lewis said was you should kill this animal because it has a risk to everything else. And it really gets into that idea in the Brothers Karamazov, where people, the more I love individuals, the less I love humanity. And the more I love humanity, the less I love individuals. And Lewis has gone to the point, at least, and you can't extrapolate a person's views from what they say on a podcast, because you're speaking in the moment. You can't get the full nuances of your thing. You're in a different state of mind, potentially. Like, they're just trying to have fun and make jokes, so there is that. But I think what he said still exemplifies it, even if Lewis himself is not this person.
Yeah.
Which, and I think he seems to be a fairly decent person. Like, well, I think most SJWs are. Like, I'm not saying he is an SJW. I don't think most of the Ozcast is. But so I think Lewis is like most people, is a fairly decent person. But the problem with progressive ideology is that it hits normal people and even like people who are a bit more politically aware, let's say, and it traps them because the wording it uses words like hate speech and racism and sexism, where you're, oh, if I oppose this, then I'm a bad person. It's similar to George Bush did the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, do you oppose patriotism? It's like, do you hate America? It's like, wait, no, I don't agree with what the law says. It's the Patriot Act. It's for patriots. Mm-hmm. So the progressive language of
Patriot Act's constitution
of hate speech and racism and sexism is not it makes you think, oh, I'm a good person. I want to be seen as a good person, so I'm going to say these things that are actually evil if I stopped and thought about them. But anyway, so Lewis said you should kill everything that seems sick to save everyone else if you actually care about animals, basically, right?
Yeah.
So you don't actually care about animals. You care about the idea of animals. Yeah. Like if this woman loves her pet that she probably raised from a baby llama, and you don't care about it. You care about animals. You're a vegetarian, so you're a better person. So this is the creepy thing, right? You can condemn any individual to death because you are a person who loves people. Like, if you extrapolate this to humans, right? I can condemn any human to death because I love humans. Like, I can condemn. Lewis has an older brother, right? Yeah. So let's say I'm a dictator, right? I can condemn Lewis's brother to death because I love people more than he loves his brother.
Yeah.
And no, I don't love people because I love people and I'm a better person, sorry. Like, he might love his brother more than I love people. But because I love all people, that means I'm a better person, and therefore I can condemn his brother to death.
Yeah. I can't remember what it is.
Which I don't think he was thinking about the full implications of what he was saying.
There's one thing I remember, which is quite literally the, killing one person for greater good.
Yeah. Well, C.S. Lewis said the worst tyrant is the one who does things for your own good because he can sleep well at night. It's safe, like, happy in the knowledge that
it's something I can't remember, but there's this other series, this anime I watched a really long time ago, and one group of humans in it, basically humans split into two groups. One group of them are fighting a war against a super powerful alien race, and so they cannot afford to have weak humans. And so if you're born with a birth defect, like let's say you're missing a foot, you get killed. If you if you're getting old and you have like a slight mental illness, you get killed. If you have Alzheimer's, you get killed. Even if you have an injury they can't easily fix, you get killed, because it's for the good of humanity, for everyone being tip-top condition, because every single citizen of humanity that's left has to fight these aliens.
Yeah.
And this person ends, main character's part of that group, and he ends up with a group of other people. And one of the other main characters is in a wheelchair. And it basically breaks him that, like, this is an actual human being, this person in a wheelchair.
So that's the thing about morality. I've been thinking about this, where you cannot judge people who are in different situations. You know how they say, like, it's a time. Like, you can't judge it because of the times?
Yeah.
I don't think I've said this before, but I've thought about it more now. I don't think morality actually evolves over time. I think what happens is the times change, and so what is moral changes. And I don't think that morality is subjective. However, I think that wealth allows you to be kinder or more forgiving than not wealth. If you are poor, like let's say you only have enough food to raise 10 children a year.
Yeah.
And if you don't have 10 children entering the army, if you don't have 10 men, women, whatever, 10 warriors entering, let's say 10 people, all your people fight, entering the army every year, your nation will be destroyed. Any child that you are wasting resources on is a child who 16 years from now won't enter the army, and then your nation will be destroyed. Your mercy will get every single person killed. So I don't, you know how, like, cat burning used to be
on the lesser extreme of that, so I've heard this thing before, which is about tipping in restaurants, and North America is sort of seen like a thing you have to tip.
Yeah.
But it's also seen as a bit of a kindness, where it's like, all right, so I'm working minimum wage, let's just say, and I want to treat myself by going out to a restaurant. I'm treating myself I can't actually afford to also
Yeah.
tip the waiters because, like, this is as much as I'm willing to spend as the small amount of money on myself.
Well, it's like money doesn't bring you happiness, and like all good things come from helping others.
Yeah.
It's like if you have the resources and energy to help others,
Yeah.
you're in such a good spot that that's true. But a lot of people can barely take care of themselves or can't even take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And like another thing, like I'll give to charity, help others. Like money doesn't help. It's like money helps a whole lot until you can afford everything you need.
Yeah.
After that, it's less important. But when you need money, there's basically nothing more important.
Yeah.
Like besides your health, your family,
Yeah.
and food, and
Money helps with all those.
yeah, even family because you can see more family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and help out other family. But
Yeah. So, but basically, it's things like if you're basically
yeah,
if
so you're not
a
a
student,
jerk if you're poor. Yeah.
If you're a student, don't tip. It was like this thing that I think a college I went to, they basically said like, you're a student, like you're going to this restaurant because like you had a hard week, so you eat at this restaurant, then you go back to your life and you can't afford a tip. You can't even afford to go to this restaurant, but you definitely can't afford to give more than what
Yeah.
you got.
So yeah, people don't want freedom, right? Even though freedom is necessary for spiritual actualization, self-actualization. It's necessary to find the kingdom of heaven. It's necessary to pursue the divine sandwich, to worship God. You need freedom. But people don't want freedom. They want safety. It's really obvious right now with the whole COVID situation where everyone's, well, not everyone. The outspoken people, I don't know if they're a majority or not, are saying, like, vaccine passports. Like, here, please, take my freedoms. Please, like, a vaccine passport is the ability for the government to create classes of people. Because they can... You know,
like the Inquisitors. Like the Inquisitors popped up of people who are outspoken.
yeah. Well, the thing is, right, like they're saving lives, they're helping people, but they're also making everyone reliant on the government. They're destroying all small businesses and then giving out money. So now you need the government to survive. The government, it's basically enforced socialism. Like nobody voted for it, but it happened. And it has another issue of this vaccine passport, right? So right now they're saying, oh, you know, restaurants, planes, whatever, you get this vaccine. So it's your way to get into pubs that you wouldn't otherwise be able to enter. You're like, okay, fine, you know, like if this is what it takes for me to get into a pub, sure, I'll do it. But what you've done is you've said, okay, government, you can choose who is a person and who is an unperson. Because what if you say, you know what? If you're unvaccinated, right?
Yeah.
You are a drain on our country's resources. Like, why should we give you healthcare in a country that has socialized healthcare? Like in the United States, this isn't a problem.
Yeah.
In Canada, I can see it happening very soon, that they will make healthcare, not like they won't give healthcare to anyone who doesn't have a vaccine passport, because now they've in many places around Canada, they've now created two classes of citizen. And so you're okay, well then I'll just get the vaccine, fine. And sure, you're getting this vaccine, whatever. But the thing is, they've now have a system in place whereby they can say, okay, and if you don't get the next vaccine, if you don't get the booster shot, if you don't get the next booster shot, you also aren't a citizen. You also cannot go to a hospital, go to a restaurant, go to a pub. And you know what? Pfizer, Moderna, they're companies. They want you to keep buying these vaccines.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely absurd that progressives are the most capitalist big business people out there. Like, you know, open borders and closed borders, right? You know what's the most socialist policy? Super closed borders. You care about your citizens the most. They get all the money. No one else gets your money. Socialism doesn't work if you have open borders because then other countries can steal your money. The most capitalist thing you can do is no borders because then you can get an immigrant in, pay him like $2, and he goes away happy because his country it's worth way more. And then you're like a super capitalist nation if you have like no borders whatsoever because then you have the absolute free market and everyone goes away happy. And yet the progressives are the open border people. They're the big government people. They're the big business people. They're the ones, oh, I love you, Pfizer. I love you, Disney. I love you. And open all the borders. Destroy any possibility of social welfare. Destroy any possibility of working class having fair wages. It's absurd. They don't think anything through. They just say, like, if they want to be super capitalist, hyper capitalist, whatever, go ahead, sure. But they're coming from a position of near communism, and yet they're not getting it at all because they haven't thought their position through. And so these are the people that are voting, right? Everyone's voting. Everyone's voting to take away their safety. Everyone's voting to make two classes of citizens. Everyone's voting like, I don't want to have to make decisions. I want the government to be my parents. I never want to grow up. I want to be coddled for my entire life. and just be a cog in a machine. I want to be like the grand, like fascist design of all people for the state sort of thing. And I don't think there's actually anything wrong with fascism as a... Wow. Look, I saw someone put this great. A lot of people look at the aesthetics of fascism, which is like the death camps and the uniforms and the military and whatnot, and so, oh, we don't want that, and then they're actually fascist. But the thing is, because fascism is about giving up the individual for the sake of the state. So what fascism is it's, okay, we've killed...
So fascism is the people for the state?
Yeah.
And communism is the state for the people?
No, communism is an economic system whereby the...
Socialism is the
socialism,
state for the people.
Socialism is just a net so that you are never without resources. Oh, okay. So socialism is a way of saying we want those that are rich to be forced to support those that are poor. So it's an anti-charity system or an enforced charity system, basically.
Yeah.
Which, if you look at Norway and Sweden and whatnot, it seems to work pretty good. But the thing about Norway and Sweden and Finland, they actually have very tight border... Well, they used to. Sweden doesn't anymore. And look... Well, Sweden now has actually zero immigration policy. Sweden has some of the tightest border control in the world now, actually.
And Norway has very tight...
Because Sweden didn't have any, and they were like, oh, wait, this was an issue.
Yes.
This didn't work. So... These people not looking through their positions. They're begging to be made slaves because people want to be slaves for some reason. We seem to... Dan Carlin actually said, democracy and freedom isn't the base state of humanity. It's authoritarianism. And he's right. Like, and the thing is, people will beg you to chain them up because they're afraid of making their own choices.
Well, even an example of what is it called when you tell a story about yourself? What's this?
Like an anecdote?
Anecdote, yeah. Anecdotally for me,
yeah,
is if I'm told to do something,
yeah, then it's their fault if that idea was a bad idea.
It's part of it, but it's also I'm told to do something, and so I'm working on something. If the person's there and they keep talking to me, I am slower at that job because they're there. Because I keep checking with them, like, is this all right? Is this all right? Is this all right? And like I'm basically trying to do it, I don't know, perfectly when they're there, but if someone's like, do that, and then they walk off and leave me to my own devices, I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And they'll get it done. And it's like, well, that took me 50 minutes, and I'll just sit there because I'm done. And it's very much those, like, if they're there, then I have to be attentive to that, and that makes me slower. And so, like, I find if there's, like, an authority figure in a sort of position near me, it's like, oh, I have to now do this. Where if they're not there, then I'm independent. And it's like, why can't I just get the work done while they're there at the same thing.
And this really ties into as well to what I've been saying about how I've been going through this sort of like mental awakening of like I'm addicted to blaming other people for my life, or like very spiteful sort of thing. And that ties very much into if you have someone to
blame,
if you have someone that controls you and gives you a bunch of bad options that you follow, then you always have someone to blame who isn't you. And so you become very spiteful and vengeful, like, oh, I hate the government, oh, I hate the big companies, oh, I hate them. But having these horrible, oppressive people you hate is so much more preferable to being responsible for your own decisions, because then you messed up, and then you have to grow, and growing hurts like crazy, and it's scary, and it's hard, and everything's your fault.
Well, lately with my YouTube channel, the views started going down, and at first I was sort of like, oh, YouTube suppressed me or whatever. And I had to change my mindset because I realized it was going to be bad because like they have no reason. Like I have no idea why it getting suppressed. Maybe it's happened, maybe not. I'm going to treat it as if it's like completely out of my control. But even if it's completely out of my control, it's still I'm responsible for it.
No, treat it like it's completely in your control.
Yeah. Well, so that's what I meant. Like I am in complete responsibility of this. This is my responsibility. Like there's nothing YouTube doing. It's nothing anything else. It's my responsibility. I have to accept it. It will go down. It will go up. But it's not someone else doing it, it's me.
And then that gives you power over it. Then you can actually make a change.
Well, also, it stops me from going like, oh, I'm getting suppressed, all my channel's going downhill, all my channel's going downhill, and like going into that spiral of
blaming everyone for your problems and never improving.
And also it's just like I'm failing at what I want to do. Like, oh no, I'm failing and I have no control over this failure and it's just going to happen. I'm going to die.
Yeah, you just give up. There's no point in continuing.
Where it's like, well, whatever, I'll just keep on. For me, it's like, whatever, I'll keep on going. I'm responsible for it. I have to make something good. Or, okay, I'm not making everything for a bit, so yeah, the views will go down, whatever.
Yeah, so
It's my responsibility. I get to choose what happens.
I think what you've shown there is a great two-pronged example of, one, freedom is necessary, or you can only resort to nihilism and despair. And two, freedom is empowering. It makes you more powerful and forces you to grow and become a better person.
Yeah.
But if you
It
can
also reduce my stress not having, like, it's weird. Taking it, like, even though it's the first step is very stressful, once you've taken the burden onto yourself, the stress goes away.
Well, what happens is
it's like jumping into a cold lake. Like, you get hit by the cold shock, but then you can swim in the water.
I think it's more like jumping into a cold lake if you're on fire.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't want to jump in that water. It'll be so cold.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what actually it's like. You have to force yourself to feel the bad feeling.
But yeah, I thought of a less deadly one. That's like, if you've eaten a bunch of spicy food and then you have to go to the bathroom because your stomach got upset, but going to the bathroom is going to be painful for the duration.
Yeah, lower the bar here.
Yes. But I was trying to get away from... I just saw a metaphor as not being lit on fire and jumping into a lake.
I thought that worked fine, and now the brow has been lowered.
It's relatable, though. It's more relatable than being on fire and jumping into a lake.
Cavemen now.
Ugh.
Cavemen, probably. You know, like, our ancestors survived, so they probably actually had cleanliness standards. So, democracy is the abusive husband who we think is the only option because we love them, and they have gifted us freedom, but in reality they keep beating us, right? And they will always... It's not good. Like, people keep voting to be oppressed, and they keep voting to destroy their own economy and their own welfare, right?
Well, the only option sometimes as well is like, here is man with a top hat, and here's man without a top hat. Those are my two options. They're the same man.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this actually. So, let's say that Canada is on a pillar, right?
Yeah.
And so you have the Conservatives for 10 years or something, just chipping away at the base of that pillar. And so the Canadians notice we're not stupid. Like, we're a smart country, right? So we see the Conservatives just chipping away at the base of the pillar of the country. And so we're like, oh, we'll show you Conservatives. We'll vote for Liberals. So then we vote, and Trudeau gets in, and Harper's like, okay. He hands the chisel to Trudeau, and like, it doesn't change anything. They're the same people in power. They're just playing a game of pass the chisel back and forth. What we actually want is for them to stop hitting the chisel against the base of the pillar.
Yeah.
So, monarchy. So I don't see what was so wrong with the Magna Carta, right? The Magna Carta forces rulers to obey the laws they themselves set, right?
Yeah. And it holds them to accountability. Sorry, not the Magna... Was the Magna Carta the Dukes?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Dukes hold the ruler to accountability.
Yeah, and they're also held accountable. So, I don't see what's so wrong with just Magna Carta plus monarchy. Like, you get... Okay, now here's the thing. There was I watched a video where a guy pointed out all the problems with copyright, and then his suggestion was abolishing copyright. I haven't thought out my position on monarchy at all. I don't think we should demolish democracy just outright, and oh yeah, like, monarchy will solve it.
It's a lot to ask of the Queen.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Queen...
Should take over again.
No, she should exercise the right of the Queen in both England and Canada.
Yeah.
And she should have the responsibility of exercising it. Like, hey, we want this law. And she just goes, no. And that's like, oh, okay.
All rulers in the British Commonwealth should be forced to execute at least 2 prime ministers during the time they are in power. Like, they just should have a quota of 2 prime minister executions. Like,
well, if we want to talk about a different extreme concept, which is holding politicians to accountability. I just have to get this up because I want to say it for a while.
Well, I like our voting pool of assassins. But...
Yeah, so this one, right, is, you know, when a yes or no question is asked to a politician, and a lot of them start stuttering, and then they don't say yes or no, or they answer a different way.
Yeah.
So basically, what it is there's like a certain amount. No, you can just ask a politician a yes or no question. They can lie, or they can say the truth, but they have to say yes or no. And if they fail to answer it in a long amount of time, or they don't answer yes or no, they get a finger cut off. And then...
No, I disagree with this entirely. But I'll say why, but you can...
Yeah. And then, once they lose all their fingers, they're executed.
Right. Definitely not. There is some weird obsession, which I think seems to be more on the not progressives, like the right more, but basically everyone who's not progressive. of people just answer this yes or no question, right? And I think that is very, very short-sighted and very wrong. Yes or no questions are not legitimate questions because they frame...
They force you into a position of taking a
side.
binary.
They create a false dichotomy.
Yeah.
They force you to... They set the scene before any other consideration has been made. They say, this is how the universe is. They basically say, is the universe option A or B? When there's infinite other options out there.
So, I had a caveat to add to that because I had this law as well, which is they can also just go, I abstain from answering that question. And so they don't give like a stuttering non-answer or whatever. They just go, I abstain from answering.
Then you can ask questions to make them look bad by not answering. Such as, like, even a question like, have you stopped beating your wife? You say, abstain from answering. It's like, oh, you're hiding it. They need to be able to defend themselves. They need to be able to say, I have never beat my wife. If you do not give them that option, your questions can still make them look bad. You can ask very, very deceptive questions that appear to be one thing and are totally different. Like, are you sexist? Yes or no? And it's like, well, I refuse to answer. And it's like, oh, what are you hiding? Or it's like, well, yes or no. But here's the thing, right? I don't think that gay men should marry women. That's sexist. I am determining something based on a person's sex.
So for my system to work, I have to figure out some way to make it so the yes or no questions that are asked are also mitigated.
No, so what you're doing, right?
No, I'm trying to make my system work.
You can't. Okay, this is why you can't. So the Principia Mathematica was written in 1904, I believe, which is a 3-volume book which laid out the fundamental proofs of mathematics and showed that all of math worked, all of it was consistent. It's massive. It's like 1,000 pages or something. Yeah. And it was written by 2 amazing mathematicians. They're like, bam, there, math. This is logic, this is reason, this is the entire world of logic contained within these 3 volumes. Yeah. Took us like 10 years or something, but here it is. Well, it took all of human history. Then Gödel comes along like next year with like a tiny little essay, and he's like, bam, yeah, you can't actually... Any sufficiently complicated set does not contain everything that can be within that set. So this is the main issue, I think, that is progressivism. They are trying to define things because people are afraid, as a whole, are afraid of things they don't understand and can't conceptualize. The universe is not conceptualizable. There is no rules to govern reality. If you try to make rules, the world is not a board game, it's not a video game. If you try to make rules, it won't work.
So I have to make a rule that makes the universe have to make sense with rules for my...
No, you have to allow anything to happen. You have to allow freedom. If the politician is allowed to stutter, that's annoying. But it allows for everything else to work. So the only thing you can do... So if you say something like... You make a very simplistic stand, like let's say with the whole trans debate, right? Like you say women are adult human females, right? Yeah. You say that stand, you say yes, okay, this is the only definition we'll use, and you're like, well, what about I don't know, random trans woman, contrapoints? What about her? Yeah, she's a woman too. It's like, wait, but you said a woman is an adult human female. Yep, and contrapoints. Okay, what about Blair White? Yep, she's a woman too. That's the only thing you can do is. Yes, here's the rules that govern reality. This is order. But you can go into chaos and you can bring back new order. But you do not... So it's a fractal, right? You have a triangle and every side is a triangle. You zoom in. There's triangles all the way down. Each triangle is... The sides are made of triangles, right? Yeah. You zoom in and in and in and in and in. It's always triangles. But if you zoom all the way out, it's just one big triangle or like 3 triangles or whatever it might be. Because... the exceptions do not extend the board. It is a space with finite... Reality is a space with finite area, but an infinite perimeter. Or maybe here's an easier one to look at, right? You take like a inverted logarithmic curve, or like so like an L, right? And then you spin it into a 3-dimensional shape, so you have a long funnel. Yeah. This funnel has a finite volume. You could fill it with paint. However, that point goes forever. You can't actually paint the outside of this. It would take infinite amount of paint. And so all of reality is defined within this funnel. However, all the rules are the outside of this funnel, as in there's always exceptions, there's always more, but it's infinitesimally small, and you address it as you come to it. So you can't paint the entire outside of the funnel, but you'll paint it as you come to it. I think the fractal is actually better because the funnel's just getting confusing.
So no cutting off the fingers of politicians,
No.
what you're saying.
No. And so I'll also suggest a alternative to democracy that isn't monarchy. So I think the best system of government that ever existed in history, as far as I'm aware,
Was the Republic.
no, it was the Empire, like the Roman Empire, not the Star Wars one. However, the Roman Empire, most of the leaders were terrible. I think the best system of government that ever existed was a very short period of the empire. Was the 6 rulers before Commodus. So, what is the system of government?
It's
The leader of the country chooses the best
apprentice.
person from, not even an apprentice, the best person from all the citizens, well, in the upper class that is related to them really, but all the citizens in the country, they choose the next person that will take over. And it cannot be, no, it doesn't actually work. This is the best system. It doesn't actually work. And that's why democracy, that's why they say, it's a terrible system, but it's the best we've got. Because the problem is, dictatorship is the best form of government as long as it works. But it is so easy to get a bad ruler.
yeah.
Now, there's actually a very interesting form of government you can do with cryptocurrency, which is it's possible to set up contracts that can be claimed, right?
Yeah.
And so what you do is you set up a cryptocurrency, so it can't be traced. You set up a cryptocurrency contract of assassination of every leader that comes into your government. And all you do, it's just a pool, and you can just add money to it at any time. And whoever kills the leader gets all the money in the pool. And so all you have to do is wait for that pool to get big enough, and that person's dead.
Oh, yes. Why, hello, Cesus. Welcome to our house. How's it going?
This is actually a form of government that would prevent someone like Hitler from ever existing. Because, Hitler, very dangerous, very good protection around and whatnot. If that pool gets high enough, his bodyguards are going to start like, I could make 500 mil if I just shot him one day when I was like changing his laundry or whatever. I mean, that's basically what the Roman system was, wasn't it? Like,
Yes. It was.
It was just bribe a dude until they're willing to kill the current. Like, how many Roman leaders didn't die from assassination? Like 4.
The thing about the Romans, the Roman Empire, and the Roman upper class, very privileged people, very wealthy, who can basically do whatever they want. I bet your chance getting murdered was in 80%.
It's very high, but I think that it's for a citizen, it's probably not that bad. Although they had a lot of bad rulers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that bad of this stupid ruler got murdered. Nice. But the problem is, Aurelian got murdered.
Yeah.
Because the rich people didn't like him. And that's the problem is with this pool, is the richer that you are, in theory, the richer you are, the more you've contributed to society, so therefore your voice should count for more, potentially. Because you know what you're talking about. But that also means you can kill some of the greatest rulers of all time, like Aurelian.
Yeah.
Which is a problem, obviously.
And so your system doesn't work of the person picking the next person because it can't be their kid, and their kid could be the best.
Well, I wouldn't ban them from choosing their kid, but the problem is that they might. Like Marcus Aurelius failed.
Yeah.
And he ruined Rome for a while there with Commodus. So I think just constitutional monarchy with actual monarchy. Let the queen actually... I think that
A democratic...
Stephen Fry said this great thing where he said that America should have Uncle Sam, because it would keep the president in check. Even if Uncle Sam had no power, he would have to walk up the steps of this giant marble building with the great big columns and walk into Uncle Sam sitting on his throne. And Uncle Sam, "Oh, howdy there. Are you the new president?" "Yes, sir, I am. And what have you been doing in your presidency?" "Well, I did this." "Oh, and how did that turn out?" And he's just held accountable by God, basically, right? Or by the queen, or by, you need a person. I think the queen doesn't actually need power. Because the prime minister in the UK has to go and tell her what he's done.
Yeah.
And he has to face the queen's stare for every decision he's made. Boris Johnson's "And I'm going to invade France," and she's just kind of frowns, and he goes, The people want it, the party. Come on, Mom. Please, ma'am, let me invade France.
Just made me think of a different system, which, like, sort of with the Uncle Sam, which is, there's just, like, so whoever you elect has to go and tell their grandmother what they're doing, or not even just grandma, but there's just like a old Russian woman with a stick.
Yeah.
And they just have to tell her.
No, not Russian, like a patriot, an old...
Just like a, like a babushka, so I say, like, just like a...
No, you just want an old woman from your country.
An old frowning woman.
Yeah, to just, like...
Old judgmental, there we go.
An old judgmental woman. And, I mean, we have the Queen, so... Yeah. But, unfortunately... flying Trudeau over all the time would be a pain. And that's what we have the Governor General for. But the Governor General doesn't have any power or mystique about them at this point.
So the Governor General also has to be an old judgmental.
well, the last one here was young, mean woman. She was so mean they fired her.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. I kind of want a mean Governor General. Like... It's like, oh, this powerful person is authoritarian. It's like, yeah, duh. How do you think they got to a position of power? By being willing to step on other people's toes.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want my ruler...
That's why they got fired, though.
I don't want my ruler to be mean and to be able to make hard decisions. Like, I think Putin's the best leader alive. And he's not a nice person. Like, this... Well, maybe personally, but in terms of policy, he's quite cruel, right? But...
Yeah.
At least he's honest. Like, you look at, like, Obama and, Trump and Biden to a lesser degree, I think. But Obama especially is, like, the super cool, like, oh, neat. But then he's, like, one of the most murderous people in history, in a way. Like, okay, well, I mean, no, that would be, like, Truman and, just Truman. Like, if you're calling them responsible for the entire works of the country, then the firebombing of Japan and whatnot is the most... Well, no, it would be Hirohito, wouldn't it? Because of Japan's attack on China. Hirohito was in charge of the country responsible for probably the most deaths ever caused by a single country, right? I think that'd be fair to say.
Yeah. Like,
his own people and China. Like,
well, I mean, Mao was responsible for a lot, too.
Oh, I guess if you include starvation, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mao wins.
And Stalin for just disappearing people.
Yeah. I think Mao wins in that case. All right. Yeah, okay, fine. Obama, you're fine. He's a cool dude. But, like, I think drone strikes are just evil.
They are.
Like, they're so messed up. Like, you have your whole life. You're just living your life. Like, we're talking on the podcast right now. And then, we're dead. We're gone. It's all over. Everything's gone. We didn't do anything. Someone made a mistake. We didn't even get to see a helicopter, like, start firing on us. At least there's a certain degree of, like, honesty in that almost.
We get to see what's killing us.
Yeah, like... At least we see this helicopter start, like, gunning towards us, and we're like, okay, the government wants to kill us. Okay, like, that's awful.
Yeah.
But hey, okay, we know what's going on.
Also,
we have a chance.
Well, not even we have a chance. There's going to be a person in that helicopter.
Yeah,
they're going to be pulling the trigger on us. Whereas with a drone strike, you press a button, you tell it to go there, and it's just you're blowing up a building.
Well, and our neighbors see, the helicopter just gunned that house down. Like, whoa, something isn't going on. Whereas this is just like, oh, just a dot fell out of the sky and now they're gone, and everything they ever did is gone, and their lives and their hope. Like,
it was done with a stroke of a keyboard by someone who wasn't even there.
I have a USB that's a backup of all my books and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's a fire, I can run to my desk, grab it, jump out the window, sort of thing. Because that's like my life's work, right? I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
And so thinking about in terms of a life's work, like, you lose all your books and your computers, and it really sucks. But there's some things that you, like, create, and those are precious to you. Or there's memories. There's, like, the picture of your parents or your grandparents. There's a hand-carved object from 14,000 years ago or something. Whatever it might be. There's I don't know, like, you inherit the wardrobe of your like, made from oak from England before they lost all their oak trees or something. Like, there's history, and there's life, and there's dreams within a person's house. And when a person dies, those live on.
Yeah.
But it just, a drone comes out of the sky and it's gone. Like, your life's just deleted. It never was. And it's... Well, like, even if your book survives or something, it's like...
That city in Japan that we went to with...
Hiroshima.
Not Hiroshima, the one that wasn't firebombed.
Kyoto?
Kyoto
Yeah.
is an extremely precious city to the Japanese because it's the only city that still has all their temples the way it was. It has a bunch of the old building, it has the old architecture. It wasn't built up again from destruction. It's the city that's always been there. It's Kyoto.
Yeah.
It's the old capital, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the old capital, and also it wasn't destroyed. It's incredibly precious to the Japanese.
I think if you take the long view, like let's say 1,000 years from now,
Yeah.
the most evil thing ISIS did was destroy all the Sumerian like artifacts.
Yeah.
Like you say, in right now, the most evil thing they did is all the murder and conquest and whatnot. But 1,000 years from now, those people would be dead anyways. But you have robbed from infinity
Yeah.
every single thing that Sumerians ever did, and even then, you see ISIS coming, and they're like, okay, they're gonna kill us, blow up our stuff, whatever.
Mm.
Like, okay, this is some. There's an honesty in it somehow, compared to just like something falling out of the sky and it's over.
Yeah.
Like even if you're the bad guy, it's sort of like, wow, that's it, huh? You're not gonna hear my. You're not gonna let me say my evil plot. Like, the reason villains say it, I think, is because you need to justify yourself. Like everyone wants to be justified, right? And there's no justification, even if you get the right guy. And they keep not getting the right guy.
Mm-hmm.
Recently in Afghanistan, I think it was like, it wasn't just random Afghan citizens even, which would be awful. It would be horrible, like unbelievably horrible on its own. It was people that had actively helped the United States. Like, you're shooting your allies. And like, if you're just shooting another country's neutral citizens, then you're evil. Like, if the United States stops being world police, if they crumble and fail, it's like, is that bad? Really? Like, is this the cost? Like, they destroyed South America. South America used to be a very rich place, like Venezuela and whatnot. And then they kill all the leaders and stick in dictators and then cause chaos, and they keep it destabilized because, oh, we don't want communism. And, like, the CIA is just a bunch of, oh, let's just destroy countries. It's like,
Yeah.
I hate American imperialism. It's funny because that's sort of what, that's what progressives rail against, right?
Yeah.
But on YouTube, you can't say the N-word, right? That isn't an issue. Like France, that's their word for black.
Yeah.
Canada, it's not a big deal. Well, it didn't used to be. I think it is now just because Americans' cultural imperialism has made us think it is. It wasn't.
Yeah.
We used to talk about it in school. Like, we'd read books and we'd be like, oh, this is this. Like, it would be like a swear word.
Mm-hmm.
But we have worse swear words.
Yeah.
Or we used to. But now we can't. There's words we can't even say on YouTube. American words. We can. There's words in Canada, like the C word in Canada is at one point the worst word there was.
Yeah. And
we can say that on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't say this American word.
Yeah.
And it's an American company, so I guess, you know, it's fair enough. But it's just the imperialism of the Americans. It's so annoying.
Civilization, how there's like the
culture victory.
Yeah, culture victory. They get the culture all over you.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you won your culture victory. Can you at least admit it instead of this weird, like, because it's the progressives that are enforcing this to a degree, I think. And it's like, will you stop telling me that my culture can't exist because it's racist or something? It's like, wait, you're saying that you're being the racist. You are taking over everyone else's cultures. You're destroying them.
Yeah.
It's annoying, but I mean, they won, so fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, like, you can beg your conquerors to be nicer people, but it's not really their place to do it, I guess.
And you can demand that they give you money and rebuild everything that destroyed.
It's actually like, whoever thought of reparations, like, they must have had a wheelbarrow to carry their balls so they could.
Yeah, it's like
it's amazing.
It's based on history and the way the world is. It's kind of absurd.
It's amazing.
So Remel's in Book of the Fallen, right?
Yeah.
Letheras, it's basically like destroyed tons and tons of cultures, and then people get integrated and eaten by the city. And it's the Letheri culture not to care. And Tehol comes along, and his fixing it is just making them citizens of Letheras, so he completely integrates them. That's how he fixes it. Instead of like, oh, these are barbarians. So like, nope, those barbarians are also Letheri now. He doesn't go, oh, let's give you back your land, all that, because Tehol is clever enough to know that won't work.
Of course. You know, I think I'm not being politique enough, real politique enough, not cynical enough, right? I'm talking about this American culture, this two-faced hypocrisy. I think what you really have with reparations and whatnot, it isn't this. I don't think it's like some stupid like. I think if you look behind the curtain, right?
Yeah.
What reparations are? They're not the conquered being able to bully their oppressors at all.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing as the Roman day for the slaves. It's we'll have a day where the slaves are the masters and the masters are the slaves. Yay! And you're just like, oh wow, we're forcing the Romans to show that slaves are people too, and that is like, no, the Romans did this so that the slaves didn't revolt. It's just a tiny because reparations aren't really paid that often anyways. It's just we talk, we keep the conversation going. People think they have something to fight for, and then every little tiny victory that means nothing makes the oppressed feel like they're doing something. Like I think that at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff I'm like being angry or upset about, let's say. Although I don't care that much to a degree. Like I care, but not enough to hate. No, I don't care enough to hate. I think hatred is just taking poison inside yourself, and you should save that for very, very rare occasions.
Well,
But what's going on is just like I think a lot of this whole it's progressive. It's just newspapers making money. It's businesses making money. It's very easy for them to set people against each other so that they profit. Like.
I want to make up like a cause or a day, like Gay History Month, where everyone makes it rainbow. Mm-hmm. And recently we have everything's orange, like Tim Hortons is doing orange donuts, and you go to cause. So you know how you talked about trying not to be spiteful. Mm. So I want to make up a cause with like the most complicated color pattern symbol out there. So when people try to like go, we're going to be this, then they have to use my hideous color symbol.
There's a color pattern.
Yeah.
It's a sort of black and green, I believe, combination of triangles.
Yeah.
Which actually breaks your brain. Like it makes you reverse colors, so you see red as green and green as red for like weeks afterwards.
Yeah.
Like it's actually destructive to your brain, right?
Mm. So
make it that color.
Yeah. Like something like that. Just so it's like, yes, we changed the symbol of our like company logo to be like this, and then people just go, oh God.
Like stoplights don't work anymore.
Yeah.
What's a green stop sign?
Like that level of that's extreme spite.
Yeah.
And it's just the thought of like I'm kind of tired of that. We're going to do this symbolize. Like sometimes it's for a good cause and you're doing charity, but it's like you do it and then the month's over and it's like, okay.
But I don't even think the cynical nature is, we're just doing this for a little bit of profit, or we're doing this to pretend to be good people. I think the entire thing, like the making people annoyed, making some people happy, the shallowness, the people that recognize the shallowness, that's all just like 2 layers. The third layer is like, we're just doing this to keep people talking, to set them against each other, to annoy them so that they're not paying attention to everything else. So that they're like, it's just, you give you give people something to be angry about and they'll be content. Right?
Nice tinfoil hat.
No, this is how you control people. Like, it's the same thing as you want to ban all carrots in the world.
Yeah.
You do not say to your empire, no carrots are allowed. You do not say to your empire, you must grow potatoes. What you say to your empire is, the new decree is you may grow potatoes or pumpkins.
Yeah.
And then people, we have choice. What a lovely government. It's like, just squabble amongst yourselves. Enjoy. Fight back against us. Yes, good. Like, you look at all the people in power, like Obama and Trump and everyone like that, Trump's a Democrat. Obama was against gay marriage. Like, Obama's more conservative than Trump. They're working for opposite parties. And they're just, it's like, we'll just, as the wind changes, so will I. Just to move on up and up and up. And, those are just the front men. Like the Illuminati, right?
In 1984, was it a Minute of Hate?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's Gay Pride Month.
Well, I mean, with Germany was hatred. I mean, some people were messed up, and like you were talking about earlier with fascism, like it has the military, it has concentration camps. So I guess the person behind the scenes, there was several guys, but one of the forefronts was Goebbels, and basically he didn't really have hatred towards any group. He just said we need to have hatred over someone. So you, leaders, who's someone you hate? And
some of the quotes of Goebbels, like, he was a very, very smart man.
Yeah, but like
Like, it's kind of like, yikes.
So for him, he didn't hate the Jewish people. Like, he wasn't a racist or a xenophobe. He was just evil.
This is useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He basically said to them, who's someone we can hate?
But I think even more useful than that, right? Like, you're like, oh, yeah, here's someone we can hate. You can see that.
Yeah.
But what if it's useful, right, to have people hating Jews and have people saying you shouldn't hate Jews? What if it's useful to have your citizens fighting each other? What if it, like...
Well, I think he needed to unite people at that point in time. So,
like the Rothschilds during the Napoleonic Wars, right?
Yeah.
The Napoleonic Wars were happening. It was like Napoleon was doing all this stuff like, oh, you for the country, for France, but it's really just so he can extend power, and that power is for what? So he can make himself emperor or whatever. I don't know. You have the Russians saying, oh, you believe in your country, you believe in this, burn this down, and it's just to protect the Tsar.
You have the English saying, get away from us.
But you have all these people with their different ideals fighting back and forth. And then you have behind it all the Rothschilds just funding everyone.
Yeah, and then afterwards they were paid back and they became ridiculously rich.
It's like...
The Rothschilds funded 80% of the British military, and they tripled their investment in that funding, or more.
And those are the people like that we know about.
Yeah.
Like, we know about the Rothschilds now. Is there people out there that have been more clever? Like, I've seen theories that Putin is the richest man on earth, but he's not in any of the official lists, right? Because we don't know how much money he has.
Yeah.
And he's also a very frontline figure. But it's like, I think that, I think it's useful to give your civilians just a little bit of room to hate something. Or a little bit of, not even hate, to love and to hate, to have something to fight. It's the Roman Day of the Slaves is the best example I can think of. It's like, oh, we're for slaves, we're against slaves. The slaves are like, yeah, we're getting reparations. Well, and then there's Roman citizens that are like, we shouldn't give this day to the slaves. They're slaves. Why would they get this day? And so the people are totally missing the point of the conversation. The whole point is prevent the fourth slave rebellion.
So I don't know how it actually goes in the Matrix, but as I interpret and understood, so there's the people in the Matrix, and they're living their lives, but there's people who want something more, and they find out there's the Matrix, and they rebel, and then they go into the real world, and they go through that. And from my understanding and interpretation, some people are annoyed by this. They're also in the Matrix, but that is what will satisfy them most, is in the rebelled state.
Have you read 1984?
Yes, I have. And also 1984, Winston is...
It's like a game for O'Brien.
Yes, game.
It's just like, oh yeah, we'll let Winston have his little rebellion game.
Yeah, and then we'll show him he's lost.
Yeah, that'll keep order. If Winston actually kept quiet and tried to change things, like not edit the history and keep pushing it through and whatnot, he might damage the government. But we give him a little outlet for his rebellion. Yeah. We tell him to keep secret and do this and do this and do this. Then we can just track him constantly.
Well, in the book Perfect State, have you read that short story?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Perfect State, Neo's perfect state could be the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like, he could be, and the other people among him there.
And that's what keeps him pacified.
Yeah. Is the Matrix, that whole thing, and fighting the rebellion.
You weed out the rebellious people by allowing them to rebel in a useless way.
Yeah, in a controlled setting.
Yeah, you just... the FBI in the States, they apparently are they're the people funding all the terrorist acts.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest groups of terrorists in the States.
And, it sounds crazy, but at the same time, they're in total control. They can stop stuff at any time. They can also make themselves very, very rich. So you can say... There's always another layer, right? The FBI funds the terrorists. And then it's like, oh, the FBI is controlling the terrorists. Then there's the other level. The FBI is creating jobs for themselves.
Yeah.
And...
Well, so, as a theory, you were talking about progressivism. So, a bunch of people went to school and took gender studies or whatever. They took a bunch of courses, and people were laughing at them saying they're useless. But these people were smart enough to get into school, go through it, and complete a course and complete a degree. And even if you're not smart... you had tenacity and you had the patience to see it through. So you're going to create jobs for yourselves, and you're going to make sure you can.
And now they're making like $140,000 a year.
Exactly, you're going to make those jobs for yourself because you went through that schooling. So now you're going to create jobs for that schooling, and you're going to make sure it stays there. So your goal isn't actually to fix anything in a job of your job is to make
salesman.
Yeah, your job is to make sure there's gender equality. Yeah. I mean,
no, your job isn't to make sure there's gender equality. Your job is to find
gender inequality.
Gender inequality, yeah.
And it's like, there's no more gender inequality. You did your job right. It's like, nope. There's still some.
My job is to find gender inequality.
Yeah, I still need to make my 100,000 a year.
Which brings us back to the Inquisition. It's like, you will find heretics forever because you want to stay employed.
You want to be the Inquisitors because when you run out of people to persecute as an Inquisition...
You're unemployed.
Well, not only are you unemployed, but then people are going to look at you and go, hey, wasn't that the guy who killed a ton of people?
Yeah.
And
that happened to Robespierre.
Yeah, and isn't he kind of awful? But when you're doing the job, it's like, oh, he's just doing his job. It's like, it's a hard burn. But when they're done, it's like, hey, that's like the torturer.
And those people, those gender studies people, they're not even the final layer. Like, you look at oil companies, right?
Mm.
Oil companies are not oil. Oil companies are companies.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Exxon, they have the best environmental researchers on Earth. You look at Shell, they have an absolutely massive green energy division.
Yeah.
Like, these people, the moment oil stops being the main source of energy, they're still going to be the biggest companies on Earth. Because they're ready. Like, all they're doing is arguing as hard as they can against it. Not because they believe or don't believe. They don't care. It's just, the longer... We have done the math. This is all... I had a math class, like an entire semester where we did this kind of math all the time. All you do is you say, how much does it cost our lawyers to convince... And our propaganda and our lobbyists to convince the governments that climate change isn't real, let's say, or that... or to... Whatever it might be. To convince them that oil is the only option, or that oil is the cheapest thing, or whatever it might be. And then you have an equation where you can say, okay, it would cost... So it'll cost us 30x, where x is the amount of money we spend. So we will lose x dollars, and we will gain x squared dollars. So what you can do is you can actually do an optimization program, which allows you to determine the exact amount of money you should spend on propaganda every year, which will maximize your profit. So you'll say, okay, so until 2025, we're going to spend millions. After 2025, we're going to slow it right down because at that point, it'll be more profitable for us not to say anything and just let ourselves die out in the oil front.
Yeah.
And then after 2030, the most profitable thing will be just to be abandon our oil altogether and switch over to something else.
Yeah.
There's people, their entire jobs is to do these kind of calculations. And they're not hard calculations to do if you know just a bit of basic calculus. And the hard part is coming up with the variables. But these people, their job is to figure out the variables, to test them again and again. And the companies, like these, they don't care. Like, the head of Exxon, for example, might be the world's biggest environmentalist. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
He doesn't, he's looking at the end number. He's not, It's not like, so when people are fighting against oil, they're like, no, oil. And there's people, yes, oil. He's going, good. Like, he's on both sides.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, all I want is for the protesters on one side and the protesters on the other side, to be at the right ratio to give me the most money. If it's 2-to-1 oil versus environment, and that gives me the most money, that's what I want the world to have. If it's 4 environmentalists for every oil person, and that's what I want. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is what companies do. We did a very interesting formula, which was how much should you charge a company to dump their water into, like, dump their polluted water into the ocean versus treating it first, or into a river. So like an oil foundry's offshoot versus the cost of treating it. There is no amount of money you can charge them to make it worth their while to not dump into the water, basically. And this was because the only thing they will ever do is treat as much as they can, and then there's no point in trying to do more, because you'd have to build a whole new facility.
Yeah.
Like, you would have to essentially charge them for their dumping.
Enough to damage their company.
Well, you'd have to charge them more than they are selling their products for. Essentially, you'd have to make the company unable to continue to stop them from trying to make profit. You have to stop the company you have to make it impossible for the company to make profit to stop them from making profit, which means you can't. Because if you stop a company from making profit, it dies.
Yeah.
So that one's actually a little bit unrelated, I guess. But it's just, there's entire jobs dedicated to optimization program formulas. And the people in charge, they really don't care about the people protesting for them or against them. Like, it's the same thing with, like, when Cyberpunk, right? There's people that are like, oh, you Cyberpunk, you did this bad thing, which I'm on the side of. I think they did. Yeah. And there's people that are like, oh, Cyberpunk, why are you, like, this is a good game. Like, it's better, it might be broken, but it's still better than 90% of the games on the market. The people that are defending the corporations, they don't care about you in the slightest. They just know that if they do X amount, if they spend X amount on public relations, they will get 10% of the populace on their side, which is enough to maximize their profits versus propaganda spent. They don't care about you at all. You are a number.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing that throws these formulas out the window is when the people in charge actually care, when they actually have a vision. But the people that actually have visions and actually care are very rare. Even someone like Bill Gates.
Yeah.
I think when he was in Microsoft mode, he didn't care. Like, he was using the money to fund his own philanthropic projects. However, he wasn't caring how he was making that money.
Yeah.
But what he used the money for was stuff he cared about. And like I'm trying to think of a big ethical company in the world. I can't.
I've been doing some calculation, and not calculate. I guess calculation mentally of like I can do training to get a job, and the training can go fairly fast. And it's not the job I would want to do for the rest of my life. But if I do the training, then I'll have the skills to do this job as a fallback. And it's a very good paying job. It'll allow me to do other training for jobs I would want, but also it just allows me to spend the rest of my life. And so it's like the most practical thing for me is to get a job.
I've got just a job in general? Or?
No, it's like a specific direction towards a job.
I have a counter argument to that.
Yeah.
Which is, when the pandemic happened,
yeah,
a whole bunch of jobs became irrelevant. A whole bunch of jobs became relevant. You have no idea what's going to happen in the future. And so the things you enjoy might be the most relevant things on Earth 10 minutes from now.
Well, that's my other consideration with this, though.
The thing that you dedicate your life to that you don't like might become worthless tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so that's my counter argument to that.
Mm-hmm.
Which...
and I add that to the calculation.
I think you may as well pursue that which you enjoy, because you have no idea what is useful and what is not.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if everything goes wrong, at least you did something you enjoy. Now, there is an aspect of survivability to it.
Yeah.
However, here's an example that I was thinking about. I went to school for a degree I didn't get, for studies I didn't end up using, right?
Yeah.
If I had spent that time doing something like YouTube, which anyone can start, right? So I'm saying, like, I could have been applying for jobs the whole time and not gotten any, but I could have started YouTube and nothing would have stopped me because there's nothing in the way. It's self-employment. If I had started YouTube and had done YouTube for 3 years, or by this point,
7.
8.
8.
8 years. If I'd been doing YouTube for 8 years instead, let's say I made no money in 8 years on YouTube, got no followers.
Yeah.
I would have been up, $15,000?
Yeah.
Plus, I wouldn't have gone to a poisonous school that hated men and hated white people. Well, 2 poisonous schools, actually, because they both did. They made us, they passed around these ribbons that were like, do you take a vow to not beat women? How dare you? I had, at that point, I think, never been so insulted in my life.
Yeah.
It's like, will you take a vow not to beat women? It's like, how dare you? Some women need to be beaten. But actually, true, but also... I
don't think some people deserve to be beaten.
No, some people need to be beat. If you're getting attacked, you need to beat them.
Fair enough. Right. There's always people... Yep. There's an allowance of a certain amount of psychopaths in society, but if the psychopaths tread on your toes, you have to beat them.
Yeah. And if you're getting attacked and you're in danger of your life, you have to fight back.
Yeah.
I consider that beating, right?
Yes.
You got to fight back.
Yeah, sorry. I went a little too Buddhist monk. You can beat me to death and you only damage your own soul.
Yeah. But the problem with that is the monks then allow for society to fall apart because they're doing nothing to uphold society.
That's because they're upholding spiritual purity.
For themselves.
Yeah.
They're banning the world.
Yes.
It's kind of selfish in a way. Which is what the Inquisitor said to Jesus, actually. Yeah. He said, you're banning the real world for the spiritual world,
and then
which
Jesus
is selfish.
Kissed him on the lips and then walked out of prison, right?
Yeah. Well, the Inquisitor let him go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I'm on the Inquisitor's side. Like, I'm not actually, but my argument was on the Inquisitor's side there, where it's selfish to seek spiritual freedom when there's people suffering. However, the Buddhists, I think, might be right because everyone dies in the end, but not everyone will die spiritually pure. Yeah. So you might as well go. Now, on the other hand, and the Buddhist is also being an example to everyone else. So if the Buddhist is an example and he trusts everyone, you know, the idea of Orpheus leading the person out of the underworld, the Buddhist is trusting the world that they will become spiritual even if he dies. Well, so I think actually There might be something to that.
I was listening to a Buddhist monk talking about the Western adoption of Buddhism, and he was very interesting. He said several things is translated, but he was chuckling about it. He's saying basically no one in the West who says I'm a Buddhist is a Buddhist. They haven't adopted it. He said most people shouldn't be Buddhists. It's a very difficult life. And he said, but it's a good thing that the ideas are out there. As long as you're trying to do the ideas, that's good enough.
You gotta walk the path.
Yeah, it's good enough. And he basically, and then said, and I will keep being a Buddhist monk because people get to see me being the Buddhist monk, and that is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And it's for myself, but also other people get to have the Buddhist monk. Like he's saying, you don't need to be a Buddhist monk.
You need Buddhist monks.
Yes.
Yeah. As long as someone out there is being a Buddhist monk, everyone else can go about happily being degenerate. C.S. Lewis has a very interesting argument against fetishism, which is, he said, okay, sexual fetishism is completely degenerate, was his argument.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, and he actually has a logical argument that proves his point, which is really interesting. He says, okay, so these degenerates, they'll do anything and they'll sexualize it, right? They'll sexualize, I don't know, feet, children,
Nose hairs.
maybe, burping, overweightness. What else have I seen? Like furries, like animals.
Yeah.
But it's everything, right?
All right, stop going on with the list. I'm getting ill.
Well, I mean, it's not that. But anyways, someone who's really into food will still only eat food. They're not going to start eating wax and sandpaper, and they're not going to start making foods out of things that aren't foods. And so therefore, it is an illness. It is a mental disease, because if you sexualize sexual things, then fine, fair enough. You're just more sexual than someone else. But if you start going after things that are in no way related...
Have you seen that Japanese game show where they have to guess if it's chocolate or not, and it's like a shoe and they recreate it? And so it's like part of the game is literally, so you have like objects put in front of you, and you have to go, sorry, you're not allowed to touch the object. You go for it, you lean and you bite it, and like anything that's made of chocolate is extremely high quality chocolate, and so they'll have like a table leg, and so you get money for like biting things in the room, and so it'll be a tail leg, and it'll look like a table, and then a guy will walk up to it, and he'll go, and they'll like start chewing and be happy, and it'll like have paws down. Or another guy, they'll see like a leather boot, and he'll walk over and he'll bite it, and then he's bitten a leather boot, and everyone laughs at him because the idiot bit a leather boot.
I'll take that, C.S. Lewis.
Japan has an answer.
You cannot begin to fathom the depths of their degeneracy. That actually sounds really fun.
It's actually a pretty fun game show to watch. Like, it's amazing how skilled the people are who like make the chocolate replicas as well.
Yeah, look up the actual C.S. Lewis quote if you want a better argument than the one I gave. But yeah, it is interesting. And so yeah, God, like going back to Buddhisms and whatnot. It seems like, you know, we need the Buddhist, right? We need it. In Brothers Karamazov, actually, they say like there's no
Do you finish the book?
No.
Okay.
It's very long.
Okay, I didn't know how long it was.
Yeah, it is Russian.
It's like, oh, right.
Yeah.
They have nothing else to do.
Yeah. They talk about how, and I stopped reading it because it's just kind of heavy. It's like atheism and how atheism destroys society and takes away all hope from people.
Got into the story about the little girl?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm just at the part where it's about the life of the elder Zazuma.
Okay, yeah, no, I know some of the short stories, and some of them are really dark.
So, anyways, they talk about how, like, there's no faithful people on Earth. There's no one in the world that has the power to tell a mountain to move and it could step aside. Yeah. Right? Like, there's no true Christians left. Well, there might be some, like, two men in a that just fast and live in a desert somewhere, and they can do it, but there's no one else. And I think it was Fyodor says, Fyodor Ivanovich, I think his name is.
Ivan?
No, oh yeah, it wouldn't be Ivanovich. No, Fyodor. Ivan, and like the father of all the Karamazovs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so anyways, Fyodor says, that's a very Russian thing to say. Like, there's like this complete atheist is saying, oh, there's these two men of God that still exist somewhere, and that makes the world worth living, sort of thing. He's like, that's very Russian, right? Like, even an atheist says, oh, there's two men of God that can still move a mountain with their mind. It's this little Russian detail, which Russian culture is so interesting.
The thing that fascinates me about Russia is the difference between the men and the women.
Well, so there's a joke in Family Guy, right? about how all Russian women are zeros or they're tens, right? And he's like, oh, 0, 10, 0, 10. It's like this funny joke, and you can kind of think about it, and you're like, ha, funny stereotype. Like Russian women are either beautiful or like old hags, right? In The Brothers Karamazov, they talk about that. They say Russian women are the most beautiful women on earth until they're 30, and then they become like instantly old. And it's like so maybe there's something to it. Like Russia, just like.
And the men have a strange fascination with Adidas tracksuits.
If you want to marry a Russian woman, marry her young, because she has a Best Buy date. And she just like, it's like her 30th birthday. You roll over in bed and you're like, what the?
Just starts, and she stops speaking English. Just screams at you in Russian after that.
Although isn't Trump's wife Russian?
Yes.
And she's like still pretty good looking.
Yes.
I think. So she dodged because she's over 30, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like 50 or something, I think. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think. Okay, so it's not all of them.
No.
But
but she's also a model.
Yeah. But it's funny that even in the Brothers Karamazov, written like over 100 years ago, they talk about the same thing that the Family Guy made the joke about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's funny that these little details of like we need a Buddhist monk. You don't need to be a Buddhist monk, but we need a Buddhist monk. Yeah. And so if it's your calling to be a Buddhist monk, be a Buddhist monk. And if it's not your calling to be a Buddhist monk, don't be a Buddhist monk, because there's still Buddhist monks.
That exists in Christianity. So there is preachers, there's chaplains, there's like all those things. There's also monks in monasteries, and there's nuns. And in Japan, there's the Shinto priests. They'll bless your car.
Yeah.
They will bless your house. They...
Everyone has a calling.
Yeah, where you talk to a god to basically ask him not to do something? It's a petition. They petition the gods. Like, and there's imams. They are the speakers of the god. Like, not everyone needs to be an imam. And
if you don't follow your calling, you go to hell. Right? And literally, like that's what it means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you do the job you don't want, but the thing is, if you have to pick up dog poop off the side of the sidewalk, to make it much more negative than just going to something you're kind of lukewarm on, let's say.
Well, it's not. I'm also interested in the job. There's just other things I want to do more, but allows me to do those things.
Yeah. But let's say you're lukewarm on something, right? Yeah. But like sometimes you have your duty as well, and you're to pick up the dog poop, right?
Yeah.
And
who could have seen that coming?
That doesn't have to be your life.
Yeah.
That's just something that happened. Like the monk. So there's a saying in Zen Buddhism, I believe, which was before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water.
Yeah.
It's like the overall the meta aspect of your life has radically changed. But the day-to-day is the same for everyone.
Yeah.
And so you still have to do what you have to do to live. So don't worry about like abandoning your principles. Like do what you have to do. Now, don't abandon your principles, but just keep in mind that like you at one point, I don't know if you still like, I'm never going to work retail, but you had assumptions about retail that were wrong. I mean, you work retail now, technically.
I hate that whenever I have to do the retail. I'm fine with like the other stuff. It's the...
But you are technically breaking your vow to a degree.
Well, I consider it more working at like a big box store.
Yeah, but you have assumptions about that, which may or may not be true. And you also have a degree of... it doesn't have to be bad, or you might enjoy it, or you might not. Or there's a lot more to... Or it might be necessary to keep your child alive. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a great line in Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, which was like... The Grey Mouser says to Fafhrd, didn't you make a vow about this? And he said, yeah, I made a vow when I was a child, and now I'm an adult, and that vow no longer is useful to me, and so, like an adult, I will change my vows.
Well, the thing about vows when you make them, it's a kind of uneasy line, but the person who made the vow isn't you.
Yeah, and so you
have to judge that first person that made the vow.
And it's very tricky because you don't want your vows to become worthless.
Yeah.
So time might be a good enough, like 10 years, like something like that. And maybe keeping vows in mind of like putting an end date on your vows.
You can even have meta vows of this is a vow and I will not break at this vow.
That should be the assumption for all vows, I think. But what you can do is there's layers of law. Like there's laws that you can change with a majority. There's laws that you need a supermajority to change. Yeah. So your vows can be like that. Also, it's the same thing as order and chaos. You need to live within order, but you can go into chaos as in age. The situation changes. You can learn new things and alter your vow. You can say, I won't work in retail, that drains my soul.
Yes.
I won't work in retail.
Well, I changed, so when I say I'll never work in retail, I actually changed that to what the vow was meant to mean, which is, I will not do work that kills my soul.
Yeah, because
that's what that vow was meant to be, is I will not do work that saps my will to live.
like what I said about Gödel's theorem,
Yeah.
there is no set which contains all possibilities. Therefore, you should be aware that you are incomplete. So, I will never work retail. Yes, that is still true. But you're working retail now. Yes, I am. But it doesn't break my vow because there is a spirit behind everything.
Yeah.
There's the soul, and this is what the soul is. The soul is that aspect of everything which you are truly obeying. The law is a way of trying to approach the divine. But remember that you are not obeying the law, you are obeying the divine. Do not worship idols.
Yeah.
And the Bible is an idol. Worship God, not the idol.
Well, don't worship false idols.
No, don't worship any idol. I mean, yeah, it is don't worship false. But I think all idols are false.
Well, besides the ideal, because idol means ideal.
The only
and
thing,
the ideal is God.
you must constantly pursue the truth, and the truth, it's not a straight line, and you are wrong. You get as close as possible, but you are wrong.
The line "Don't worship false idols" in Zen Buddhism is if you see Buddha on the road, kill him.
Yeah.
That is don't worship false idols. That is their version of it.
And all these religions, they have the same rules and governances of like, yeah, it's the same thing as the fractal. You can zoom in as far as you want on a fractal, and it never quite touches the line. It's like Zeno's paradox, where you can't catch a turtle because if you have a distance every time, you never approach it. But you can only get closer, and so you just adjust and adjust and adjust and adjust and adjust. And but so actually, yeah, wrapping up, I think to a degree. If that works.
Yep.
Yeah. Humans seem to need God, right? Like, and whatever you call that God, if that God is the government, like if you're a socialist, you, like a communist, you worship the state, right?
Yeah.
That is your God. You are working towards the ideal. And I think the important thing there is actually you can never get to God, but you can in theory, like you can't get to the ideal communist state either. However, it seems possible because it's on earth. And I think this is the mistake the Jews make actually, is you put the kingdom of heaven on earth. You say, okay, it's just over there, which means that if you just have to kill one person to get to it, right? Then it's worth it. Like to get to the kingdom of God, to get to the perfect communist state, the utopia, it's worth it. But the thing about God, like the Christian God, if you have to kill a person to get to the Christian God, you still haven't gotten, you killed the person, you're like, where's God? Oh, he's not here. You can't do it, so you won't kill the person because you can't actually get to God. But you can in Judaism and you can in communism.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually bad. And same in Buddhism. Like you can't actually get to God. Like you have to always be better and be better and be better and be better. There's always another step in Buddhism, like reincarnation to infinity.
And you
until you don't need food and water.
Interesting thing I read in Zen Buddhism is the man who's achieved enlightenment realizes he can never be enlightened, and it's a catch-22.
Well, have you seen the analogy of the bull in I think it's the analogy it's called in Zen Buddhism. It's like Zen is the bull, and once you catch the bull, you realize you haven't caught it.
Yeah.
And this like you and the only way you realize is by catching it, but you never catch it. Yeah, so it's important, I think, to have God beyond you. And humans seem to need God, but they will worship whatever. They'll worship the state, they'll worship the government, they'll say, please take away our rights and give us vaccine passports and whatever it might be. Keep us safe, destroy our businesses, keep us safe. Keep us safe. We will worship something at the end of the day. But I was wondering, like, why? So, what is the meaning of life? It seems to be fairly obvious then. It's worship of a greater being, and following through that worship, following your purpose to that worship through what works best for you, however your worship manifests. So that seems to be a fairly good rule for the meaning of life. Something along the lines of the infinite stair, following the path, being on the path is the meaning of life. So the question becomes then, why is the meaning of life? Like, why do we need God? Like, is life that miserable? Do we live too long? Like, because I think you only need to live to about 60, right? You need to be able to teach your children how to raise their children. So you have to live to about 60. And then after that, like, life doesn't seem to really matter, like, in a biological sense, right?
Yeah.
Because once you teach your children how to raise their children, so your grandchildren are 20, your children are 40, you're 60.
Yeah.
So you only have to live to about 60, it seems like. So maybe we just need a reason to keep living after 60, or maybe we need God because life is really painful and we're like, we need something to make it all worthwhile. Or maybe God added the spark of the divine into humans to give them a clue towards his existence. Or like, it's like, why is the meaning of life?
I think why is the meaning of life is the question itself. I think
Life is because we want life is because we want meaning.
yes.
So without meaning, you are not living.
Yeah.
So it's like you need an observer in order to live, and thereby, so because we seek meaning, we have a need for. We wouldn't be able to.
We need a witness.
Yeah, we witness ourselves by seeking meaning, and because we are witnessing ourselves, we need to seek meaning, or we wouldn't be able to witness ourselves. So it's like a puddle is like, why is this hole the same shape as me?
Yeah.
Perhaps. Okay. So the next question is then, do turtles need God? Because they live for a really long time, right? But maybe in your case, like what you're saying, maybe you don't need the length, because I thought it might be related to length of life, but maybe it's
not length.
Okay, then, do whales need God? Because they have the ability to. I don't know if turtles have the ability to observe. Actually, okay, but why is a turtle not doing it? Why isn't a turtle just falling over and like not doing it? Like, why does a turtle go through its day? What motivates a turtle for 200 years? Don't you get bored of eating the same food, doing the same thing? At some point, you're infertile. What motivates a turtle? And then, more than a turtle, what motivates a whale? Like, maybe a turtle's on. I don't understand what an autopilot would be actually, even for something like a turtle. But a whale, they aren't on autopilot. These things are they got bigger brains than humans, which means they process way faster. So they've seen it all by the time they're like 10. And they keep going for like 200 years. So whales must have God, right?
They might.
Like, what keeps a whale going? What's the meaning of life for a whale? What's the meaning of life for a turtle? What's the meaning of life for a fly?
Maybe it's for each of those. For the turtle, the meaning of life is being a turtle. For a whale, the meaning of life is being a whale. And for a fly, the meaning of life is being a fly.
Yeah, but what is it to be a turtle? Like,
well, see, I think what it is to be human is
to worship God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, not even to worship God. What it is to be a human is to be observed.
Right. To be an observer.
No, not to be an observer. To be observed.
Right. And
we can get that, but we can be an observer. But our meaning of life is to be observed. And I'm not saying that as we are all super narcissists, or narcissism is our meaning, but we have to have lived.
So in a world without humans, do whales exist?
Well, I don't know what it means to be a whale because I'm not a whale.
Right, but if humans are the observers, or the observed, if you take away humans, then the world isn't being observed. So do whales exist?
Maybe.
And like, I've just been thinking, like, strange have been my thoughts of late, but like a turtle must have a god, right? Because what's a turtle doing with its life? Like, why? Like a person, they're not going to...
I think a turtle's being a turtle.
Like a person, right? They're lying in bed. They're like, why should I get up? It's like, because I have to worship God, right? And by worship God, I mean you have to follow the path. You have to do what is meaningful to you. And that is God. Follow the infinite stairs. Seek the infinite sandwich. Yeah. Obey God. Seek Buddha. Reach nirvana. Worship the state. Like, even atheists, they are seeking truth or moral good or the greater good of humanity or
the miserable atheist defiance of God.
Proving you can live without God. Yeah. I mean, you're just worshipping God at that point, I think.
Yeah, no. I don't like that kind of atheism.
Well, I think it's like atheism. Like, I'm an atheist, right? And it's the most terrifying thing ever. Like, I think atheism was the worst invention ever. Like, life without atheism would be... Like, that's why the Brothers Karamazov is so upsetting. Because it's basically what happened at the start of the like, when atheism got popular. And life loses all meaning. Death loses all meaning. There's no reason to live. There's no reason to die.
Nietzsche was so upset.
Yeah, Nietzsche came after. Yeah. But the thing is about Brothers Karamazov is he's predicting. He's like, this will happen, and this will happen, and this will happen. And then it all happened.
Yeah, and then Nietzsche came along, and he said, this will happen, this will happen, this happened, and it all happened.
Well, Nietzsche was observing what already happened.
Yeah, but he also said what will happen, and it happened.
But the most important line from Nietzsche, I think, is, we will never wash the blood from our hands.
Yeah.
Once you kill God, like, life is awful. And like, I'm an atheist. I think, like, it's rough.
Yeah,
it's
well, you from the terms of a human is the meaning of life for a human is to worship. If you kill your meaning of life,
like, if I had a choice, I wouldn't be an atheist. But you don't have a choice about that sort of thing. And I wonder, like, I don't know, but I wonder if non-atheists are just delusional or not. Like, are they deluding themselves And what I mean by delusional is like, how can you not be an atheist? As in, there is no reason to not be.
So I have to say the full statement, so let me say it. But the beginning of it will sound, I don't know, pompous or arrogant. So, a non-atheist knows something atheists don't know, and an atheist knows something that non-atheists don't know. And that is why one's atheist and the other is not. And it's like there is, from Gold Usher Block, there is questions you cannot answer. It is that one person can, I don't know if they even know the answer, but they can guess it, whereas the other person can't.
I have seen people swear themselves to God and say God is the divine light and God has spoken to me, and I prayed and God spoke to me and he guides me. I've seen people like that, right? That will later renounce their faith. Like, if God spoke to me, I would never renounce my faith, which means these people are lying?
Yes, I think that is the case, that they are lying.
Like, but this isn't like a person like, I'm a preacher, and this is a person that's like, oh, I found God and it saved me, and like, I believe in God with all my heart. And then later on in their life, they're like, no, I don't believe in God anymore. I lost my faith. It's like, how can you lose your faith after talking to God? It doesn't make sense. Like, if God spoke to any atheist, they would instantly stop being an atheist.
Well,
so the fact that you can stop worshiping God would suggest that it was a self-delusion all along.
Yes. The person who said, I found God, and then they lost their faith.
So
they never had faith in the beginning, because faith is...
delusion.
No.
Yes.
No. Faith, we talked about this last time.
It's the OCD behavior of thinking you can influence the world by believing hard enough.
It's... in your system, you lose faith, right?
Yeah.
So faith is that you can ask God to move a mountain, and he will. However, once you ask God to move a mountain, you will no longer have faith.
Yes. And I used to think that if I really, really hoped, if I really, really didn't think about getting a certain present for Christmas, then I would be more likely to get that present for Christmas. Be like, as long as I don't think about this game, like, I won't jinx it and I'll get it. As long as I do, I won't get it, right? And I believe that, and I try really hard not to think about it, right? I was trying to influence the world by the weight of my belief, but it doesn't mean that it's true. So if someone's faithful, are they faithful because I can't even conceptualize why they'd be faithful? Or are they faithful because they think thereby they create God, and they're like, are they afraid to destroy? Like, you take a faithful person, right?
Yeah.
And you say to them, tell that mountain to move, not because you doubt your faith, but because you are so sure in your faith that you know that God will respond. Or
well, then why didn't Jesus walk on water when he was told to?
Well, no, he was jump off a cliff.
No, why didn't he walk on water when he was told to by Pontius Pilate?
Because he couldn't. Well, but it's the same. You can look at it as like, because he actually believed, like he truly believed he could, but he didn't want to show doubt in his faith. But you see how faith is just, you see how faith can seem to be just a self-delusion, right? Like, faith is merely...
Because I had the thing of know something you don't know and know something, right? And why I put it that way, and it might even be, so the person I had God and I didn't. Know how you have a magnet and you have another one?
Yeah.
And they're the wrong size and they flip so the polarity snaps?
Right. Okay, this...
So because I am not an atheist. This is what, you're Ivan, I'm, what's his face?
Dmitri.
Is it Dimitri?
That's the oldest brother.
No, the youngest one.
Alexei. Or Alusha.
Yeah, Alusha.
Yeah.
So...
His name's Alexei, but his nickname's Alusha.
I see a lack of faith.
Dimitri's the crude, like, physical one.
I see the lack of faith almost as a delusion. Like, I see not believing in God as a self, or not even God, but just a lack of
right. So this
that as a delusion.
So this is the exact same thing that this person that said they believe in God said. They said, like, if you don't believe in God, like, I don't understand you, but I respect you, but you should believe in God because it's just the obvious truth, right? So
I'm not saying you should believe in God. It's not the obvious truth.
So, okay, here's my point. If you go to the mountain and tell it to move,
Yeah.
and it doesn't move, you take a faithful person. They go, and then you take a faithful person, a truly faithful person.
Yeah.
They go to the mountain, and they tell it to move. They will lose their faith, which they've demonstrated by asking it to move, I suppose. But at that point, they will no longer be faithful.
See, what you're doing, though, in this hypothetical scenario, is you're saying you take a person, you make them lose their faith, they've lost their faith.
Okay, here's another example.
No, that's...
Yeah, I know. Okay, but here's another example from the Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah.
Okay, a man is being tortured to death by Muslims.
Yeah.
A Christian man. And they say, renounce your God. And this man didn't renounce his God, and they tortured him horribly to death. And people are, oh, what a great story. This Russian man was a hero. And Smirnikov, who might be one of the Brothers Karamazov as well, because there might be 4. There's at least 3, but he might be a bastard. He is a bastard, but he might be a real bastard. He's a real bastard, but he might be a real bastard.
Okay.
Smirnikov says, I would abandon God. And they said, what? No, you can't abandon God. Like, why would you abandon God? And Smirnikov, because like then you wouldn't go to heaven. And Smirnikov says, if there's a God that won't understand that I would rather not be tortured, then I don't want to worship him anyways. And therefore I don't want to go to, like, I would rather reject this God than lie about like continually taking this pain and go to heaven. So if you're being tortured to death and you're told to renounce your faith, tell that mountain to move. And
what
if you are forced to tell the mountain to move and then it doesn't move, then you would lose your faith. And so at that point it's like, well, then the faith was never real in the first place, was it?
What, in this case of being tortured, for the man, because I don't believe in it quite that way, but for the man who's being tortured, what matters his mortal body in that he goes to heaven?
Because he's in a whole lot of pain right now.
So what? It's his mortal body.
And you should look after your mortal body, otherwise everyone would just kill themselves.
No, because that's also against the idea. He can't.
That was what the Catholics said, because everyone was killing themselves because they figured out the loophole during the Black Death. They're like, oh wait, life sucks, I'm just going to kill myself. And they're like, okay, so there's the 100 Years' War, it's been going on forever. My grandparents were in the same war I'm in. There's the Black Death, there's Mongols, life is terrible, I am worth nothing. Like, there's 10 of me for every 1 job. I'm just going to kill myself and take the easy trip to heaven. And the church is like, whoa, they figured out the loophole, let's close that.
It's not even that loophole there of the kill yourself. So, I'm talking about what matter you eternal soul.
Why is this cruel God forcing us to not kill ourselves?
Why? Journey, right? Before destination. So, what does that mean?
Let's follow the path.
It means follow the path. Alright. So, why abandon the path to immediately get to the destination? Is the destination worth it if you didn't take the path?
No. So therefore, why would you let them torture you to death?
Because that's the path.
Then I don't want to be on the path that is being tortured to death. I'd rather be on the path that isn't being tortured to death.
Well, then that's not your path. Then you're a spineless coward who renounces your faith. Because someone told you to do something, even though you had a different idea. Someone told you to do something, or else they'll torture you. And you did it because you didn't want to be tortured. And that is your path instead. Because your morals your idea cannot hold up to pain of your mortal coil. What the right good of every fiber of your being of following your faith is not good enough.
Arrogant would you have to be, right, to believe that you knew what was right for yourself entirely? Because the person I was 5 years ago is not the person I am today. I was wrong if I was tortured to death for my beliefs 5 years ago, then today I would not be alive to see that I do not believe those things. So you'd be dying for a cause you shouldn't believe in because you
are not that person yet. You are that person then, in that moment.
In that moment I was wrong. And so is it better to be tortured to death for the wrong reason?
In that moment, you were right. 5 years from now, you're wrong.
No, I was wrong in that moment because I was being spiteful and hateful towards myself and everyone else. And I was not giving other points of view the right. I thought I knew everything, and I was wrong. And now I know better. I am less wrong. I'm still entirely wrong about all my beliefs, but I am less wrong. And so knowing that I am wrong now, I know I am wrong right now. And so why should I die for my wrong beliefs now?
Because it is more wrong.
What if it turns out that, like the Islams, right? I reject God and I go to Allah, and it turns out that Allah was the real God. Like they had the right path. Like obviously torture isn't a great reason to change your mind. You should change it because they convince you something, like they show you God or something. But if you point out a picture of a cow and you say that's a cow, and then I say no, that's not a cow, it's a picture of a cow, but there's a cow standing behind the picture, right? Then you're right for the wrong reason. I guess it's it's better to be wrong for the right reason, I suppose.
Now, the case with the guy saying reject your faith or he'll kill you is for a different reason. He should have said, yeah, I reject my faith, not get tortured to death. Then he kept worshipping God without that.
Well, that's what Smirnikov says you should do. But they say you shouldn't do that because it's part of faith is to not reject God by any means, right? Like, because then you are the kind of person that rejects your faith when you are fed mortal pain.
You're not rejecting your faith, though, in that.
No, but you won't stand up for yourself. Like, you can be bullied into lying about your faith. You're being untrue to yourself just because someone bullied you.
Well, the caveat is you murder those men later.
And that's the you see, that's the point is...
However...
Your one person's true faith is to be true to... So what I said about how, like, the fractal, right? You always get closer to the line. Lying is wrong as a whole. However, if you lie to protect Anne Frank because she's hiding in your room, that isn't evil. It's obviously good. And so there's a very complicated line where you go into chaos. You learn that not all lies are wrong. Like, all lies are wrong, but not all lies are... But this lie isn't wrong. Because exceptions exist. There's always exceptions, right? There's always some truth you do not know about. There's always some unspoken thing. And so if there is always some unspoken thing, then how do you know being tortured to death is good? And so why should you stick by your belief when it's so awful? Like, shouldn't you be true to yourself? Torture sucks. So you should be true to yourself and not be tortured, right?
We talked about...
Although I think that's getting away from the point, actually, at that point.
We talked about... in arguments, standing by your principle.
Yeah.
And if you can't win by your principles, then you're not winning.
Yes. So
your faith for the faithful is their principle.
Yes, but
the faith for the faithful is their principle.
I feel like I'm having troubles getting my point across.
Right.
No, not that because you're interrupting. I just don't think I'm communicating to you what I'm trying to say. If you give up your faith, you give up your faith.
Yes. That is correct.
So if something is that... then that's not a real thing, right? Like...
No, it is real. Okay, so... electron...
Yeah.
When observed, is there. When not observed, is not there.
Yeah.
Are electrons real? When electrons
we'll say yes.
When electrons are real, they're real.
Yeah.
And when they're not real, they're not real.
Okay, what do you have faith in? How about, let's put that. Why are you so special that you know the answers and everyone else doesn't?
I don't know the answers.
Then what? Then you don't have faith.
No. I don't know the answers. And that... there is so much that I do not know that the possibility of... not even possibility, I cannot see mentally a world, or not even world, an existence without something more, because of how much I do not know of what there is. There is something more than... yeah, there is something more.
But that's not knowing, that's knowing. Like, there might not be anything more.
So is delusion, then, there is something more, or there's not something more? Because if there is something more, then it's delusional to say there is not something more. If there is not something more, then it's delusional to say there is something more.
It would be wrong in both cases. Not necessarily delusional.
Well, not even wrong. Like, you've fully believe there is nothing else.
Well, I don't.
Then that's not atheism. That's agnosticism.
Right, but that's what I think all but no, I will say it's atheism because atheism is not believing in God, right? As it's used colloquially. Like, atheism means without worship, which I think most atheists worship something, whether it's the state or whatever. So I'm just going to use it for the term of atheism is someone who doesn't believe in something. And if you don't believe in something and you don't have faith, that doesn't... You are taking the stance of, I don't know. And if you don't know, it could be anything. Whereas to have faith is to know. And I don't see how you can know because, like you said,
no,
it could be anything. Like, why would you have faith instead of just not knowing?
Because it's rather miserable not having faith.
Exactly. And so you're just doing it to not be unhappy. And so therefore it's just a delusion. It's like, I will...
Stop. So, loving someone is far better than not loving someone. Having a relationship with someone versus not having it. You do it because without it you'd be miserable.
I disagree. I don't think loving someone's a choice. I think you love people irrespective of choice.
Alright, then there we go. It's not a choice to have faith or not. You do or you don't. You can stop loving someone, you can stop having faith. And then you can find it again, you can find love again, you don't have a choice.
Love is something...
No, it's on the same line. People love God. They don't have a choice.
So, okay, so Pollyanna, right? She said, I will always be happy no matter what. That sounds like a crazy person to me, right? Like, you get beat into the ground, you ground it, like, like Stoicism, in a way. But she's happy all the time. It's not even... Because Stoicism isn't saying you... I think... Well, I don't know, but I was thinking Stoicism, you could still feel sad. It's just you can choose what you do about that sadness. You don't have to be a slave to it. You still feel things. The only thing you have control over is how you react to things, but I would say that you can react to your sadness and whatnot because emotions are fleeting. But Pollyanna, she's like, I will always be happy no matter what. I'll always see the bright side and everything. And she gets hit by a car and she loses the use of her legs and she's still happy. And but that's what the Joker did, right? Like, he decided that nothing has... Like, it doesn't have to be nothing that has meaning, but he decided that everything was a joke, right? Because you can decide, you can decide to not care. You can be a sociopath. Like, I could be a sociopath. I have the ability, I don't know if everyone does or if it's just me, I have the ability to stop caring.
Why have you kept on caring? I don't think you have the ability to stop caring. I think you have kept on caring because you actually don't have that ability. Because if you had the ability to stop caring, you would have done it, because caring sucks. It's far easier not to care, but you haven't because you can't, even though you think you can.
So if the choice is if you have to make a choice to not care, then why do you have to make the choice to believe?
No, you don't have a choice. You believe or you don't.
Then that's a different argument, then, isn't it? Because if me having the choice to feel emotions or not is a different argument from not having the choice to believe or not. Like, they're you either have a choice or you don't, right?
Yeah, I'm saying you don't have a choice in what you believe.
But
it's like love. Like, you don't choose.
Right, but I don't believe. Like, I don't believe in anything. It's not like with love. It's like, who do I love? Who like. I still love. It's just, who do I love? But it's not like, what do I believe? It's, I don't believe. Like, why would I know anything? I'm not.
Because
I consider it arrogance, I guess. Like, I don't have the arrogance to believe anything, and I'm probably falsely ascribing a virtue there. But I don't see how anyone can know anything.
Because I'm going to use love here, and I don't know if it's the right case, because you're saying there's people you love and there's people you don't love, but you just don't believe.
Yeah.
So, if we're going with Catholicism here, and we're going to use God, the Christian God for this case, God is not beyond people. In the sense of someone you love. And so you don't love God. Is someone you don't love. And so you don't believe.
Why do you know that God exists? And if you know that God exists, who are they? What color is their skin?
God exists because they have to.
Well, I agree with that. But what color is their skin?
And the color of their skin doesn't matter.
But what color is it? And if you can't see the color, then do you believe in God?
No. The color does not matter. It is not what color it is. It does not matter.
But if you know If you know, then why can't you say? Otherwise, you don't know.
Because God is God. Color of God's skin is God. The face of God is God. The appearance of God is God.
But then God's just the infinite sandwich.
Yes.
Which is just the statement that you should follow your heart and follow the path. It's emotion. It's not a. There's no belief there. There's just action.
No, there is belief. God is the greater virtue. God.
No, that's worship, not belief. Like, you can say life doesn't work unless you worship God, but you don't have to believe in them. It's like money, or you can't believe, like money. Money is.
This is just for me because I know other people do have descriptions of God, but God. I hate that I do not have the words to say it, but it's an unsayable truth. But God exists because God does, and God's appearance is an unsayable thing. The belief is that there is God. The faith is that God is. I have faith in God even though there's lack, therefore, of any proof.
Well, that's what faith is.
Yes.
But, okay, but if...
And I can't choose to say God doesn't exist. I can't go, maybe it is a delusion then.
Why not? Why can't you countenance the thought that God might be a delusion?
No, God can be a delusion. But at the same time, God not being there is also can be a delusion.
I agree.
However, when it comes to looking at the glass as half full or half empty, the glass is full completely of water and air.
Then you're choosing something.
No, it's my observation.
But you just said that God existing might be a delusion, God existing might not be a delusion, but when I choose how to look at it, then I choose this.
No, it's not when I choose how to look at it, but when I look at it, it's not when I choose to look at it, it's when I look at it.
Then God isn't a delusion.
Yes.
So then God does exist.
Yes.
So, but why can't God not exist?
Because it doesn't.
What doesn't?
Sorry, why can't God not exist? Because God does exist, that's why God can exist.
Is it possible that God doesn't exist?
In my understanding of it, in my own approach and observation, no.
So then you know God exists. If there is no chance that God doesn't exist, then you know God exists. That's what knowing is, right?
No. I believe God exists.
You just said you can't imagine that God doesn't exist. So therefore you know God exists. Otherwise, what is it to know? Like, if God can't not exist, then God must exist.
Earlier you talked about the politicians answering a binary, yes or no, and I was talking about someone's finger. So, this is one of those cases.
Okay, but
it's more complicated than that. So, right now you are giving me an option. We have a line. Alright. And so, on one side is God does not exist, I believe, right?
I think I'm saying the same statement twice and you keep giving me different answers.
No,
I'm saying, does God not exist? And you say no. And then I say...
Yes, okay.
And then I say, okay, therefore, you know something.
Those are two different statements.
But one logically follows the other. You have made a statement about the universe. You have said God doesn't not exist. You have said God exists. Therefore, you have made...
I have said God does not exist.
No, you've said God doesn't not exist.
Yeah, sorry. God doesn't not exist.
Yes.
All right. So that's this side.
So therefore, you know something.
So that's this side of the question. Then this side is, does God exist, right? Or you know God exists. That's this side. You know.
No, you know that God doesn't not exist.
No. It's not I know. It is that God doesn't not exist. Okay, yeah. It is I know. Yes, okay, we'll go with that. I know.
Yes, so then you know something.
Sure, I know something that you don't know.
Well, no, you just know something.
Yes.
Why?
Because I do.
Where does it... why do you know? Why are you the one person on earth that has been gifted with the knowledge of God when I haven't? Why hasn't like?
Why haven't you be? Sorry, I'm not trying.
Why haven't like?
Why haven't you?
Yeah.
Why have I? Why haven't you? Why?
Point to God. Say what he looks like. Say like, why do you know something that no one else knows, or that 50% of people don't know, or 10%, or whatever?
Why do you know that he doesn't exist?
I don't. I don't know anything. I'm not the one making the claims of knowing.
Okay, so you...
You claim to know, I claim to not know.
I don't claim to know that God exists.
But you claim to know he doesn't not exist.
Yes, and those are two different things!
Yeah, that's fine. But you still know something.
Yes.
I don't know anything. So why do you know and I don't know? Why are you making a claim to know?
I don't know why I know that. I don't know.
But you do know something.
I know something, but I don't know why.
And so that is why it seems like if you cannot hold the opposite of an idea in your head, then it seems like you were avoiding it. Like, why would that be an emotional... Or no, let's not...
It's emotional because I'm frustrated with the inability for the two of us to communicate properly, because it's a difficult subject matter and it's hard to communicate, and so I'm getting frustrated from that. And that's why it's emotional, because it's hard to communicate. And it's because I see red as red.
Yeah.
And you see red as red. But if I were to see your red and my red are not the same red. I had this thought when I was a kid, that this is my world, but your world, everything is circles.
Yes.
However, you see it as circles, where I see it as the way it is.
But for some reason, your world is the correct one, because you know something and I don't.
My world is not the correct one. It is the one I see.
Right. So,
and your accusation of me saying it's the correct one, I think is...
Okay, so you are describing the world you see.
Yes.
But there's a chance the world you see is wrong.
No, it's not wrong.
Why can't you be wrong?
Because wrong's not a part of the equation. In that you are in the bubble world, I am not. Your world is the bubble world, and mine is this world. Neither of them are right or wrong. They are what they are.
So God exists because you believe in him.
Yes.
And God may or may not exist because I don't know.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, it works for me.
Okay.
So God exists because... So basically what you're saying, I could be wrong here, is that we have two different realities because we are... Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? We have two different realities because we're two different people.
Yeah.
And so the reality, your reality where God exists, is real because it's your reality. And if you were someone else, that might not be the case. But within your reality, that is the truth. And that doesn't mean that you are in your own delusional bubble or that you are the only right person in the universe. It means that every person's reality is unique to them, as if like we're all in the perfect state, Brown and Sanderson wrote.
Yes.
And so you're saying, hey, my world's full of dragons. I'm like, what? No, my world's full of like cowboys. Like there is no dragons. And you're like, yeah, but in my matrix like dimension, there is dragons.
Yeah.
And so if the universe was a VR game, you plugged in with the God after credits, but I plugged in with the random after credits or something.
Sure.
Okay. And so therefore we can both be correct about something. Well, not correct necessarily. We can
exist in different realities at the same time.
Yeah. I think what's weird is the fact that people can abandon the reality where they know there is God. Like it's like if you can abandon the known, then it wasn't known in the first place.
Yes.
Like, it is possible 10 years down the line that you will not think that God exists.
So to say, God is the best catch-all term, I guess. It is the easiest way to communicate it.
If it's possible 10 years down the line for you to not think God exists, then that means that God might have never existed in the first place.
Yeah.
And so therefore you don't actually know. Your current best guess is that God exists.
Yes.
Which is not necessarily
my current best guess is God does not exist. That God does not exist.
And what's the difference between not existing and existing? Because it's kind of annoying to say.
Because of my faith and belief, which I think is very personal to me.
That's what all those faith people say.
I know, and that's why I'm trying to use those words.
It's very annoying because it's counter to logic, which is really annoying, I gotta say. But well, it's not counter to logic. It's counter to
your observation.
No, like you are actually denying and agreeing to the same things in the same breath, and it's kind of confusing. But that just means that we're not using the same language. We're using a similar language. Like, I'm not saying that you are actually being illogical. I'm saying that if you are being consistent,
yeah,
and I can see you as being inconsistent, it means we're not actually using the same language. We're just using languages that seem similar. Which is obviously hard to communicate.
Don't believe in God singular.
Right.
But I do not have a defined amount of gods, one god a million. I do not even have a defined God as there is even one. But there is something more that can be called God that does exist. However, such a thing could be considered a fundamental force of the universe.
Well, that just brings me back to my same question, so I don't think it worked. Because my question would be, why do you know about this fundamental force of the universe? Which I don't think
it's not the fundamental force either. I'm saying I don't know which one of those is the case, but I know one of them is. So I do not...
So you have two options and it's one of them, sort of thing?
Yeah, I do not know the face of God.
Right.
But I know there's a face. I do not know if God exists, but I know that there is no lack of God. So there... I do not... Oh, I need a different language.
Like, listen to yourself, man.
I am trying to work through it mentally.
Yeah, I know.
Here.
I know. It's just like...
It's like... There's not a line, there's a triangle. There's yes, no, and backwards bracket.
So do you know about the ontological argument?
There's...
Do you?
No.
Okay, so God is the greatest possible thing there is.
Yeah.
And a God that exists is greater than a God that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Therefore, God exists. Because if God didn't exist, then God wouldn't be the greatest possible thing, but by definition, God is the greatest possible thing.
Yeah. Basically, I don't like saying that I know God exists, because I do not know what God is like. But I know that, or not even, I believe, I guess? Yeah, I believe that there is something that has the face of God.
Right. So, if I had a box with a marble in it, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I put the marble in, and when it was dark, you could see the marble, but it was dark, right?
Yeah.
So I drop it in, you just see its silhouette.
Yeah.
You know there's a marble in that box, but you don't know what color it is.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Sure. But you keep calling it to my perspective.
Yeah.
What you're asking me is there a marble in that box? Sorry, there is not a marble in that box. So you ask me, is there a marble in that box? And I say yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're asking me, so you're saying, so there's a marble in that box, so it's green.
I'm not saying that at all.
No. But when you ask me, God exists.
Yeah.
That is asking me to commit to the existence of God.
Yes. I'm asking you, okay, you saw me put the,
No. I need to have my brain work here. So you're asking me to say God exists. And I am saying that God might exist, but a fundamental force might exist, but a tree might exist, that a fundamental force could exist. I'm not going to call that God. I'm going to call that the unknown, but has the face of God. So yes, God to me does exist. Or in each reality, I don't like treading on other people's perspectives, so that's why I say maybe even though I say God does not exist. However, when asked does God exist, I say maybe because I am observant of other people's realities, of which sometimes to them God does not exist and to others it does. So that's why there's a maybe there when asking if God exists, but when asking does God not exist, I say no, God
But
does
if you're
exist.
observing other people's realities, then wouldn't you say maybe for both?
No, because I still have to account for my own, and my own God does.
Right, but in someone else's God might not, according to you.
Yes.
So then there'd be maybe for both, or you should be consistent with yourself for both. And so if you're saying yourself, then no, God doesn't exist, and yes, God does exist, right?
Yeah, and so I should say that.
You shouldn't account for other people's reality.
Yes. I should not. I should only have it from my own perspective. So, yes, something exists.
Right. And so why do you know that?
And that's where we got to the point of the two realities, is because I believe.
Right. And
Because I know it because I'm making God.
so if you stop believing in God, does God stop existing then?
Yes.
Right. So isn't
But
that...
I can't stop believing.
Right. But isn't that literally the definition of a delusion? Like, without stigma, isn't that just a delusion? Like, you create something by... Like, if something's not delusional, then it sticks around even if you don't believe in it. Like, I can envision a delusional sandwich that actually gives you a nutritional value, right? Like, as long as you believe you're eating like, it's like an illusion in D&D. Like, as long as you believe in it, then sure, you'll get nutrition from it. Actually, that's an interesting way to look at it, as a D&D illusion.
It's more like in... But see, the thing is, even if I stop believing in God, so to say, it still believes in me.
And how do you know it's believing in you?
Because that's a part of the deal.
And when did you make this deal? How much money was involved?
I didn't make the deal.
That's not a deal. That's called bondage.
No.
You will exist and you will enjoy it.
It's not that you will enjoy, it's you will exist. And I will exist.
And if I worship you, I'll enjoy it.
No, it's not that either. It's you will exist and I will exist. Because that's all I know.
Okay, so what I'm getting, I could be way off here, but... Well, no, not what I'm getting entirely. It seems to me that you're suggesting that you think there is something out there that you don't know.
Yes.
How is that different from my position?
Because you're miserable.
Why am I miserable?
Because you don't know if it's out there.
Yeah, that's scary, but it doesn't mean I have to be miserable about it.
Yeah. See, I know it's out there, I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. And yet why is my
But you-
position the spineless cowardly one, where
It's
I'm the
not.
one that's brave enough to stare into the abyss?
It's not the spineless coward one. I never accused you of that.
You did. You said if I
Yeah,
gave
if you
up...
gave up your faith, that's different.
Right, but why is
Because
it...
that's giving up the core of your being, because the core of your being was your faith. If you're a Catholic and you're being told to give up the core of your being, then you're a spineless coward.
Right, but what if you don't have any faith?
Well, then you have nothing to give up. If a Muslim told you to renounce being such a wet blanket...
Why am I a wet blanket?
I don't know. If Muslims told you to stop being agnostic or they'll torture you to death,
Yeah.
and you're like, no, I don't know.
Well, like, I don't lose anything by saying, yeah, sure, I'm a Muslim, right? Like,
I think you do. You're being coerced.
yeah, I'm not...
Be an agnostic.
I'm hurting
martyr.
Islam. I'm hurting Islam because I'm not actually... I'm just doing the rituals without believing, right? But am I hurting my lack of faith? Like, I don't think so. Am I being true? Like, what's my true to myself? Well, actually, in the Brothers Karamazov, he says, if you don't believe in anything, then, like, an atheist should not only be permitted anything, they should be required to do anything, including murder and theft and destruction, because there's no reason not to. Therefore, it should also become mandatory in order to improve your station in life, which does sound bad.
Yeah.
And so I could say, like, so I could say that I have to keep my faithlessness, otherwise I might as well permit anything.
Yeah.
But then I like to keep the option to change my mind. Like, if God came down and talked to me, then I'd be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, that's the option. As long as no one else is making you do it, it's up to you to
But
observe your reality.
I could be wrong, though. Like, what if the Muslim torture is like, oh, actually, you know what? That's a pretty compelling argument for God. Like, you know what?
Then
I've been
you
to
are someone who can be convinced by torture.
Yeah. I think I could be. Yeah.
And then that's who you are. Whereas the man who died was someone who cannot be convinced by torture.
But then you would never actually be unfaithful to yourself. You'd just always be a scumbag to someone else, which is like very subjective reality. Which,
yeah, and if that's who you are, then that's who you are.
But I don't think that...
You cannot 2 + 2 is 5, Winston.
Right, yeah, you can't enforce your reality on someone else, but I don't think that...
I'm going to torture you until 2 + 2 is 5. And if you stop the torture by saying, yes, 2 + 2 is 5, you could be stopping torture, but you also do lose a bit of your soul doing that.
I think so, yeah.
And so when they say, stop being a Christian...
Right, but...
But then there's the caveat where people go, oh, but then why would you follow a God that would allow torture? And I think that... I mean, this is my perspective, and it's how I interpret. I'm not even saying this is my faith, but how I interpret the Christian faith is that it's your free will.
No.
Or some, I don't know.
No, God doesn't matter. If you give up your Christian faith because you're tortured, God will understand. God would accept you in heaven, but you would not accept yourself.
Yeah.
You'd hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you hurt yourself, God doesn't care. God will forgive. God will try to heal you, but you damaged yourself. You're the one that damaged your spirit, not... So God would understand, but you, for your own sake, should not renounce your faith. Yeah. And similarly, so this is interesting, actually. Like, why is... if God is all good and all powerful, why is there evil in the world, right? And I think that it's kind of backwards, and the answer to it is actually in rephrasing the question. And it becomes, God is all good. There is evil in the world. Therefore, God must be all powerful, so you have someone to blame. Because if God is not all powerful, and you stub your toe on a rock, then that wasn't God's fault. But if God's all powerful, that's God's fault, and then you have someone to blame. And God can take that blame. And that is why, if you worship the state, then you have an enemy. But if you worship God, then he's all powerful. I can blame him and he can absorb it. Like, he's like Jupiter getting hit by asteroids. It doesn't care. Mm-hmm. It's like, whatever. Blame. You need someone to blame. Like, I think there's an acceptance of, look, either you have to be like a Buddhist monk, right? And you have to be able to forgive like crazy. Or you need someone that can take that blame and shrug it off like it's nothing. Yeah. It's the same thing with marriage. You either need to, for some reason, bind your marriage with a worship to the divine. Mm-hmm. Or you need to give a vow to an all-powerful God that will oversee it. And so I think that God is all-powerful because he is all good. Because if he wasn't, then you couldn't blame him for all evil. Yeah. Yeah. Problem with that,
problem with that is we're a little bit out of time.
Yeah, just slightly. But it's also like...
So we'll end it.
Wait, no, I want to wrap up with a very quick... Like, what do you achieve, with those sort of conversations? Because it's tricky. Not in terms of... I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It's just... you go in circles for 2 hours and then you're back where you started.
Yeah, you got a little bit. I got something out of it.
I don't know. It's that is the one place I think where that thing Marcus Aurelius didn't like, I think actually has a place.
Semantics?
Yeah, because you there's a point where your conversation is useless unless you define everything. Because it becomes impossible to actually converse.
I got something out of it, although I don't think maybe it wasn't what you're aiming for.
I wasn't aiming for anything. I was trying to understand.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I think what I got out trying to explain to you is better understand you for myself.
Yeah, which is good. I like doing that. I did that in the court case. I questioned everyone until they were happy with their decision. Because apparently they weren't before I questioned them. And afterwards they were happy. And so I think it's good to question. Good to question. Yeah, all right. Oh, let's...
there, so goodbye.
Yeah, that's a good example in questioning, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Learning. I think you need to question. If you're afraid to... That's I guess what the whole point is why I asked all those questions, is because it seems to me that people that believe in things are afraid to question their belief because they can't imagine a world where they don't believe. And I still couldn't get that across to you because...
No, you did get it across to me, but it's very much the case of...
Well, it's a self-referential argument where there isn't a world where you don't believe. Yeah. So it doesn't work to...
It doesn't work from your perspective, and it doesn't work from my perspective. Neither of us can get it because it's a thing neither of us can see.
It's like there's a very real danger I see or a danger... If you're not able to question your own beliefs, then are they true beliefs? But the whole basis of your belief is they're unquestionable, which makes it kind of an impossible conversation. Yeah. Because if your beliefs are unquestionable, by design, then there's nothing I can do to say, hey, you need to question your beliefs, because that destroys the beliefs.
Well, I did question them there in that whole thing. I was wondering why I thought those things.
But if you can't reject your faith and then get it back, then I don't see it as being anything other than being faithful because you're afraid to not be because you're afraid of being faithless, basically, I guess.
Yeah, I have to leave it there.
Yeah, all right. Well, see ya.
Bye.